Okay, I think I'm live. It was giving me a tough time as usual, but it wasn't quite as bad as previous times. It only took like 5 tries. Let me just straighten some things out here. And I want to get going pretty quickly because I got a lot to get through as usual. Let's see if anyone pops into the chat. I didn't do any kind of warning or anything. Like if I do, it just doesn't seem to matter because whether I do like the 30-minute warning or I just come live, like I don't know. It gives me such a difficult time going live. I don't know what that problem is. Just waiting for a couple people to get into the chat to make sure everything is okay. Seems okay. Oh well, I guess it'd be nice to give you guys some time ahead of time, but I don't know, with all the computer problems, it's just not doable. Hey, Rook and Final Grace, good to see you. Is everything okay with the audio? I just want to make sure before I start. I had some microphone issues as well, but hopefully that's okay. Okay, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. All right, so uh, if you haven't seen the previous live stream, I definitely recommend checking it out. Hey, Drew, good to see you. Um, for one, it's like a really awesome breakdown of this TV show Lost. I doubt there's anywhere online that you could find like a breakdown like that where people are talking about what the show actually means. All the North Pole Island symbolism, all the Kraken and Blue Beam scenes and symbolism, and all the body snatcher stuff, and just all the things I talked about in the previous stream with Jacob and whatnot. And, I'm sure people like talk about like the Christ, possibly Antichrist symbolism, but I doubt. We're at the cutting edge of understanding of these things. So if you're interested in the TV show Lost, I definitely recommend checking out the previous stream. But also, I wanted to bring it up because near the start of that stream, some people were talking about a Mandela effect involving the Willy Wonka movie, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory from 1971. And there was some like confusion about what the Mandela effect was and whatnot, and people kind of came to the conclusion. Some people did in the chat that it wasn't a real one, and this and that. So people were either saying or making it sound like the scene in question is the scene where Charlie gets the golden ticket, and that's actually not the scene. It's the scene where it's his birthday and his family is giving him presents. And I do actually believe that it is a Mandela effect. And Moneybags 73 made a couple videos on it. Definitely check his channel out. And also, I think Sandy Diva apparently was talking about it. Some people have said so. Definitely check out her channel too, of course. So subscribe to them and check out their material on that and a lot of other content and Mandela effects too, of course. And just checking out the chat here for a second. Oh, that's interesting. Final Grace is saying the actor Harold Perrineau is always trying to get people home, like in Lost from and The Matrix. And I definitely agree with that. And also, they use a lot of actors in the same type of roles. And I'll actually be mentioning that later on in this stream with Ed Harris, for instance. But yeah, I think that's part of the spellcraft is for good or bad. They use the same actors, and that kind of reinforces their like archetypes, in all these different roles in movies and TV shows. So yeah, that's definitely something that's going on. All right, so I'm gonna jump into it here with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I'm going to talk about all the Mandela effects that are apparently associated with this movie. For starters, one is the title of the movie, and also let me just say that this isn't a movie I'm super familiar with, so I don't none of these Mandela effects, I can say with 100% confidence, for myself. But I do believe that they are Mandela effects. So for instance, like some other, like if it was like, Back to the Future or Star Wars, those I'm 100% confident in the Mandela effects associated with those movies. For instance, in the beginning of Back to the Future Part One, Marty McFly absolutely did not have a tiny mustard yellow ukulele. He had a normal looking, cool looking electric guitar, and that was the whole point of that scene was for him to look cool. And now he's holding a tiny little yellow guitar, and it looks ridiculous. So that's I'm 100% certain that that's a Mandela effect. In Star Wars, C-3PO was all gold. I'm 100% certain, and there's a ton of other Mandela effects associated with those movies. So I'm just saying, with Willy Wonka, I saw this movie, a long time ago, and it was one of those movies that was really popular, and it was on TV quite a bit. So I saw scenes, here and there, particularly when the children are in the chocolate factory and they're getting offed, one by one. I saw a lot of those scenes, many times. But I'm just saying, this isn't a movie that I have like, a super clear memory of. So I'm not going to go 100% just from my own, personal perspective on the Mandela effects. But I do believe that these are Mandela effects, and a lot of people have made videos on these. Also, check out Hazel Fiver's channel. He has at least one or two really good Mandela effect videos on this Willy Wonka movie. So just to start, the title itself is Mandela affected. So apparently, because it used to be called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but now it's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and some people don't remember that. And one thing that I also think is that the logo itself is Mandela affected here. Like, yes, I totally get that. The W would have this, artistic swirl design that makes sense. But like the K going into the A here, this doesn't look right to me. I think this is Mandela affected, and this is something that we often see, like the preceding letter going under the A, if the next letter is an A. So like you could see that with the movies Blade Runner. Check out the cover of Blade Runner if you're not familiar with that Mandela effect. The L goes under the A now. And Black Sheep is very similar too with Chris Farley and David Spade. The L goes under the A. And those two covers I'm 100% certain of. And there's a lot more like that too. It's a pattern of the Mandela effect, which is why I think this is also that pattern. And also the R here, I don't think it went this far under the Y. The R is basically after the Y now. So I don't think that's the way it was either. So here's another look at it. This is like from the movie. Also, Gene Wilder, people have a lot of confusion over when he died. So a lot of people remember him dying before 2016. So I personally have no memory on that. Like celebrity deaths was never really something that I paid much attention to, but I'm just bringing it up because this is a Mandela effect that a lot of people have talked about, or I should say, a possible Mandela effect. And here's a thumbnail from Hazel Fiver's video on this. So definitely check this out and subscribe to him, where he talks about how the golden ticket changed and the Wonka bar cover changed. And basically, what he's saying is it used to be Wonka golden ticket, but now it's Wonka's golden ticket, like apostrophe S. And the Wonka bar didn't used to have a top hat on the W, which is what he remembers, and a lot of other people remember too. But it's not something that I remember personally. There is one from this movie that I do remember pretty well, but these other ones are not ones for me personally. But they do fit into patterns of the Mandela effect, particularly the apostrophe S, which I'll show you guys. So this is like how he and other people remember it just being Wonka golden ticket. And this also makes sense too because it's like Wonka bar, it's not like Wonka's bar, so like his branding was just Wonka, not like, Wonka with an apostrophe S. So here's like when Charlie gets the ticket, and now it says Wonka's with an apostrophe S. And this is from Hazel Fiver's video. He found a lot of residue for this. So, on this website, they have a replica of the Wonka golden ticket, and you can clearly see it says Wonka without the apostrophe S. So, like, they went through all this trouble to make a replica of this thing, and they got it wrong, So that's like a typical sign of the Mandela effect. Here's another replica where it just says Wonka. Here's another replica. These are all just different replicas. And this one's really interesting because this is literally a board game about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And right on the cover of the board game is the golden ticket, and they have it wrong. It says Wonka with no apostrophe S. And this is like what the board game looks like. You could see here the golden ticket doesn't have the apostrophe S for the board game. So they go through all this trouble, and they get that wrong. But also, we'll say that the Wonka bar does have the new logo and the top hat too. So the Mandela effect isn't like this perfect thing where all the residue is going to fit all the time either. But interesting that they don't have the apostrophe S. And here's a view of it from the Target website, and the Target logo is also a Mandela effect. This one I'm 100% certain on. This isn't what the Target logo used to look like, and as I've talked about in previous live streams, it refers to the bullseye at the North Pole, the concentric circles going to the North Pole Island. And here's the apostrophe S golden ticket. And here's some other examples of because I haven't talked about the Mandela effect in a while, so I just wanted to bring up a few examples of this pattern because I think these are interesting. So we have Bridget Jones's Diary. Now this isn't a movie I saw, and it's not something I'm super familiar with. But I remember this, poster. I remember the movie coming out, and it didn't have this S like this. It was just, Bridget Jones's with the apostrophe, and this extra S is added by the Mandela effect, I would say. And what would be the message here? I think some of these messages refer to basically God's, book of life. So like, it's like God's, he's the ultimate all-seeing eye. He's taking notes of everything. He's, you know, uh, on a spiritual level and a symbolic level. I'm not saying that he's, writing a diary in physical form, but this is like, the book of life that like Jacob has in his cave and lost. And so what do we have here? We have the Jones. So this would be like the right pillar, the J names, like Indiana Jones, how I've talked about in the past. This is referring to like that, Joan, John, Jane, Jean, Jack, the right pillar, which is like the Jesus pillar. And then the left pillar would be like the Lucy pillar, where you have names like Lucy and Luke. So we have this, Jesus right pillar name here, and then we also have the name Bridget. So I looked up what the name Bridget means, and the name Bridget literally translates or means exalted one. So it's basically the exalted one's diary. And then I think this also relates to this other Mandela effect, which relates to used cars and their value. So I didn't want to show it to you guys just in case this is a big Mandela effect for some people, because I've gotten a lot of people in my real life with this one, because my family's like really into cars, and they always have been. Like I wasn't ever really, but most of the people in my family, they're always like talking about cars, and they restore cars and all this stuff. So they're very familiar with this thing, and they all remember it. I don't know about all, but I haven't asked everyone. But like that, many remember it, the way it used to be. So it's been on the screen for a bit now. So if you remember this, it was Kelly Blue Book, but now it has an extra E here in the word or the name Kelly, and it didn't used to be like that. And what I also find interesting too, a couple things, we have the yellow and blue coloring for Columbia, and I think this relates. It's basically the same thing as Bridget Jones's Diary, in my opinion. This is like the Kelly Book of Life. Essentially, it's the blue book. It's like the blue beam, but and the blue beam is like the light of life. Essentially, it's Jesus. And here we have like these old Kelly Blue Book, symbols or logos, and the O's are merged. And I highly doubt they were like that. But these logos are the ones I'm familiar with. So it's something to take into consideration and to think about, because the Mandela effect often does incremental changes. So, take a note that these newer logos with the Kelly Blue Book, with the word book, they don't have their O's connected. There's something that could happen in the future where these O's literally become connected. And it's not just something that would happen on the internet. Like if you literally have like one of these old, like if you had like this here, for instance, this would literally change in your physical possession. It would go from two separate O's to two connected O's, like making the Vesica Pisces. So I'm not saying this will happen. I'm not the one doing the Mandela effect. I'm just saying, based on my experience with the Mandela effect, it's a highly likely one to change. And I also strongly think that these older already did change. So something to keep in mind. And the name Kelly basically means a bright-headed warrior. So that's what we all should be striving to be is bright-headed warriors for the truth. So it's like the book of life, the book of the bright-headed warriors, essentially. And this is one that I'm 100% certain on. So you guys are probably familiar with Dave Chappelle. He used to have a show on Comedy Central in like the early to mid 2000s, and it was a show that my friends and I watched a lot. And I know the name, and the name of the show is not what it used to be. And also, by the way, Dave Chappelle was replaced with a different person. Like, if you can't tell that this original Dave Chappelle is not the same as this new Dave Chappelle, then some people don't have good facial recognition. We all have different abilities and different, skills. Um, but I mean, this is to me, this is so obvious that it's a different person that I don't even know how they get away with it. Like, yes, this new guy does look and sound similar to the old Dave Chappelle, but for one, they don't look alike to me, to be honest. And also, Dave Chappelle, he was like one of my favorite comedians ever. Like top 5 easy. I thought he was so funny and, genius. And this new Dave Chappelle, not only is he not funny, but he's got, like, average intelligence. I mean, Dave Chappelle was a genius. Um, when you listen to the new Dave Chappelle talk or do his comedy, there's no genius in it. So it's just not the same person. I hope they didn't kill him. I don't know what happened, but, very obviously replaced, and I don't know why more people don't see it. It's so obvious to me. Um, but anyway, his show, now it's Chappelle's Show. It used to be Chappelle's Show, 100%. I mean, I watched probably every episode of this show. It was Chappelle's Show. They literally had, like, like, when they went to, like, an ad break, they would have, like, I think they call it, like, a bumper in TV lingo, where, like, this old guy would be like, "Chappelle Show, Chappelle Show." Like, I remember that so well. Like, nobody ever said Chappelle's Show. It doesn't, like, roll off the tongue either. So, this is a 100% change, and then what's interesting too is, well, what does the name Chappelle mean? I mean, you might be able to guess based on how it looks, but it means chapel. So it's like the chapel, like the North Pole Chapel, the show, coming from that chapel. We're all in like this, you know, scripted reality, whatever this is. It's like a show. The world is a stage, and it's like emanating from this North Pole area. Also, another one with the apostrophe s either being added or subtracted. This famous apple cider vinegar. It starts with a B for anyone who might know this one, but now it's just brag. So we have certain names that have the apostrophe s added to them, and they seem like positive things. Like we have like Bridget Jones's Diary, that seems like a positive thing. We have Chappelle's Show, seems like a positive thing, like the chapel. And then this brag has the apostrophe s taken away. So and the name brag is a negative thing. It's named after being like a boastful, prideful person. So I'm not saying I know. This is one that I don't 100% know what the reason is, but it seems like positive things have the s added to them, and negative things have the s taken away. And another thing too is, or another example, is this band. They're called Seals, and I'll just check out the chat for a second here. While if you guys are thinking about that, let's see. Final Grace is saying, "Oh, Christopher Lloyd, yeah, definitely. He's a big world script actor, and he gets cast in a lot of roles like that." Yeah, Steve is saying that the movie used to be called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. A lot of people agree with that. I always heard it as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I don't have like a crystal clear memory of it, but I never heard people say Willy Wonka and the Charlie Factory. That just sounds weird. Yeah, Jared, I'll be getting into the moon pie here soon. Yep, serious symbolism for sure. Hey, one AJ, good to see you. Yeah, I think Jared's talking about Dave Chappelle. Yeah, I mean, like, if you can't tell that that's not the old Dave Chappelle, I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, it was definitely Chappelle show. Yeah, I'm 100% certain on that. That was one of my favorite shows. Yeah, I don't agree with that actually, Jared. I mean, no offense or anything. Jared's saying it's about downgrading our DNA. I think it's actually upgrading our DNA and saying every Mandela effect is a worse version than what we remember. I think that just is inherent in what it is because like the reason that certain like lines of dialogue or like lyrics in music, like the reason that they've caught on and they're so popular and people say them all the time and stuff like that is because they're already perfect. Like in Forrest Gump, um, life is like a box of chocolates. Like now it's if you watch it, it's life was like a box of chocolates. But the phrase "life is like a box of chocolates," that's already like a perfect phrase in the movie. Like you can't, um, make it any better than that. So if God is going to change that phrase, it's going to inherently become worse because it was already perfected. So I don't think it's necessarily like that. That's just my take on it. All right, so I think it's being done to send us all these powerful messages to help us, and also like who cares about Hollywood and music and all this stuff? Like I could like some people get like really offended and they hate how like their favorite songs and movies are changed now. Like I don't care at all. Like we should be detached from this type of thing. Like who cares if your favorite movie gets changed? Like we shouldn't be, you know, it's fine to be like entertained and stuff like that once in a while. Like I do. Like I'm not saying like you have to be like cut yourself off from the world. In fact, I don't think we should cut ourselves off from the world either. I think we do need to have part of the physical world, in our um, you know, it's like the twin pillars. You have the right spiritual pillar and the left physical pillar. We're not supposed to just totally detach our left physical pillar. We're just not supposed to be ruled by it. But leaving the physical world behind would make us not a complete person. A complete person is both spiritual and physical. Um, so anyway, getting back to this Seals and Croft, or well, you guys have had the time to see it, but now it's Seals and Crofts with an extra S, and it was always Seals and Croft. That's what I always heard. I was never like a big fan of this band, but I heard their name several times and throughout my life, and it was no one ever said Crofts with an S. It was always Croft. So again, we have this S being added, and the name Seal. There's a lot of things you could find. Kind of means like the person from the Great Hall or the Great Building. So again, kind of referring to this North Pole symbolism. Also, the seals. It's like the biblical seals at the end times. And here you can see that if you're interested. And Croft, if you look it up, it basically means like a small enclosure. So I think this is basically like the Camp of the Saints, the small enclosure at the North Pole. And another one that's changed is this popcorn related snack. It's a cracker. I think most people would say Cracker Jacks, but now it's always been Cracker Jack. And we also have again the Jack symbolism, the right pillar symbolism, and the crack could possibly be referring to like the crack in the dome, the crack in the blue beam cracking through the dome, bringing breaking through the glass barrier, the glass ceiling. So those are just some S examples. There's more examples. I just didn't want to go off on too much of a tear with it, but it's important to notice these patterns in the Mandela effect. That's how we derive a lot of the meaning from it. Because like if you're just showing like one or two S examples, it would be difficult if not impossible to know what that means. But when you see like 5 to 10 examples, then it becomes a lot more clearer what that pattern is talking about. And this is just an example of like the Wonka bar not having the top hat. And Hazel Fiver also brought up this newer Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie with Johnny Depp, and you can see like the one eye symbolism and all that. But I also think this is a Mandela effect here too, with the L going under the A. I didn't see this movie, and also the T going over the H here is weird too. And this is a typical pattern of the Mandela effect where like the previous letter goes into or over the other letter, usually under. But in this case, I think it went over. But just something else to keep in mind. And I haven't seen any of these new Willy Wonka movies, frankly. This movie just looks so terrible. I never watched it, but I'm sure it's got a lot of world scripting in it. So anyway, when the main kid gets the golden ticket, it says Wonka. It doesn't have the apostrophe S. And also on the Wonka bar, there's no top hat anywhere. So it's definitely interesting residue for those changes. And also one of the main things from this movie is this everlasting gobstopper, and gobstoppers used to have an S, and now they no longer have the S. And there's a couple candy bars that are like that as well. Lemon heads, now it's just lemon head, which is very strange. And sprees are now just spree. And I don't want to get too overly into all this, but just bringing it up to people's attention because I'm sure a lot of people haven't seen these yet, and definitely check out Hazel Fiver's channel as well. And this is the one from the Willy Wonka movie that I'm most certain of. I wouldn't put it like I reserve my 100% for things that I'm like genuinely 100% certain of, like Chappelle Show or like Berenstein Bears or Fruit of the Loom having a cornucopia or C3PO being all gold. Those I'll say 100%. This one I'm like 99% certain of. So when the Oompa Loompas sing their songs, they're talking about or singing about riddles, and now they say it's a puzzle. So they say, "I've got a perfect puzzle for you," but it's not a puzzle, it's a riddle. Like they're saying stuff, like, "What do you get when, your kid is this and that?" They're a spoiled brat. That's a riddle. That's not a puzzle. That's like saying, "What do you get when you or like what is it?" I'm just trying to think of a riddle of it. But like what is it when you or what gets bigger the more you take out of it, and then the answer would be a hole. It's just like a random riddle, but that's a riddle. It's not a puzzle. So I remember them saying, "I've got a perfect riddle for you," but now it's the perfect puzzle, which I equate to the Mandela effect as well. I think the Mandela effect is the perfect puzzle, and of course, perfect refers to Jesus. And there may be, these are Oompa Loompas, they're representative of like these helpers that I think Jesus has. And I don't want to get too into it because it's like speculation, but are they angels? Are they like these pygmies from the North Pole region? Whatever they are, they may be helping with this Mandela effect. It might not, just be like one entity doing it, but we don't know. I think it's ultimately from God, regardless of its being from Jesus or from the blue beam or from the Holy Spirit or from angels or whatever. I would say that that's all from ultimately God, but that's just my perspective. All right, so I'll just check into the chat before I get into the movie. Uh, yeah, Jared. I mean, we definitely all have to come to our own conclusions on that. Yeah, Mark, Cracker Jacks. Well, actually, if you check out the official lyrics to "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," there's like at least three changes to it, and I think they even say Cracker Jack singular, but I remember it being Cracker Jacks, of course. Yeah, I heard that, Zella, that the original Oompa Loompas were African. Sorry, my voice is a little messed up, but, they were originally African, and, they had to change it. That's why they look so, strange because they kind of changed it to another worldly appearance, but also these things might be like cover stories, because like I think like Stanley Kubrick, he changed The Shining, on purpose to be more, world scripty. And then they have this whole falling out between Stephen King and Stanley Kubrick, and like, is that even real? And then like the same thing happened with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and the original writer of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But it's like, is that even real? Like, are these just cover stories for why they wanted to change the movie to be more world scripty and more and reveal more truth of the world? Because I'm going to get into Willy Wonka, and it's like unbelievable how much truth is in this movie. Because when you guys brought up the Mandela effect in the last live stream, because like I've been wanting to rewatch this movie, I haven't seen it in a long time, so I just bumped it up to the top of my watch list, and I watched it about a week ago, and it's amazing what's in this movie. Um, yeah, just checking out the chat. Okay. Um, so in the beginning of the movie, this is the candy shop that they constantly go to. And this is the candy salesman. And by the way, Jay Dreamers has an awesome Truth in Movies on this movie. So definitely check that out. I'm not going to be getting into a lot of the specifics that he does because I also don't want to just like copy what he does. But it's like it's an incredible video that he put together. So I think watching this in conjunction with that, if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check out both, in my opinion. All right, so this is what the Wonka bar turned into, just so you have like a good view of what it actually looks like now in the scene that I'm going to be talking about. So here, this is just some examples of how all they talk about is the Wonka bar. So like on the news, the newscaster is saying, the attention of the world has been captured. Let me just get a drink. Hidden among countless billions of Wonka bars. So just Wonka bars are five golden tickets. And to the five people who find them will come the most fabulous prize one could wish for. And, it's a lifetime supply of chocolate, but the most fabulous prize is a ticket to paradise. That's what this movie is all about. And I'll just say right off the bat too that I think, and I'll explain why, but I think Willy Wonka is essentially God, and that Slugworth character is essentially the devil. And I'll explain that if that's something you haven't thought about. A lot of people have thought about that, but a lot of people also say that Willy Wonka is the devil, and I understand why, but I don't think that's the case. So, they're watching it on TV. Do you think I have a chance to get one? And then here's like, all the boxes of Wonka bars. It's just all, I'm just showing you guys. It's always Wonka bars. It's not that the golden tickets can be in anything but a Wonka bar. So they show all the scenes of people pulling all the Wonka bars off the shelves. It's just Wonka bars. This guy's selling all the Wonka bars. They look like that. The whole truck full of Wonka bars, all these carts. Now there are some other, you know, things in the grocery store a little bit, but it's basically just carts full of Wonka bars. You don't see like all the different candies. It's just Wonka bars. Here again, and another news reporter saying, oh, this is actually pretty interesting too because it's like basically equating it to the blue beam. We began with five golden tickets, like five lucky bolts of lightning. So this is equating the blue beam plasma with these tickets to paradise, ready to strike without notice at any point on the map. And I think, in this scenario, it's like a small group of people. It's just five kids, but in our world, it's all of us all around the world. And I think the blue beam will eventually strike at any point on the map wherever we are in the future. Um, no one knew where or when the first would hit. So this is like no one knowing, when the end of the world is going to happen, when doomsday will happen, which is also doomsday, when the dome goes away. So this is the scene in question. I just wanted to show you guys all the Wonka bar stuff. So it's Charlie's birthday, and they're all saying happy birthday. And the mother gives him his first present, which is a scarf that they all knitted. And this red scarf comes into play too. I don't want to get overly into it, but just in case you didn't know, Frosty the Snowman, for instance, no longer has a red scarf. So this is an important symbol of the world script, but I don't honestly know all about it yet, and I haven't looked into it much. I'm just bringing it up because there is all these connections between all this, world script media and the Mandela effect. So he gets the red scarf first, and then his grandfather has an extra little gift, and you can see it's a square. So this doesn't even look like a Wonka bar. And then Charlie goes, "I think I know what this is," and he goes, "It's a Wonka." And if you listen to it in the movie, he just says like, "It's a Wonka," and then like kind of trails off, like it doesn't even, it's like he was going to say Wonka bar, or he used to say bar, and now the Mandela effect took the word bar out of it. And he says, "Open it, Charlie," and you can see it's not a Wonka bar. It's one of those, people call them moon pies. On the cover, it just says like something like fudge and mallow or something. But I mean, I could see why it would be called the moon pie, but it doesn't say like moon pie on the front. Just to be clear about it. But I think it is known as a moon pie. And it's this, yeah. So it says fudge mallow. But for now we'll go with the moon pie thing. I think that is what it's called. But anyway, they're all saying, "Let's see that golden ticket," and they should all know that the golden ticket is only in Wonka bars. So this scene makes absolutely no sense, and it's very similar to the scene with Dolly in Moonraker. So now, like in that James Bond movie, and I've shown this a bunch in the past. I'm not going to show it here now, but she no longer has braces, which makes the whole scene make no sense if you watch it, because the man with the metal mouth instantly falls in love with the girl with the metal mouth because they have that connection, but now she doesn't have the braces and the whole scene makes no sense. Just like how this scene makes absolutely no sense. Everyone knows that the golden tickets are only in the Wonka bars, and now the whole family is getting all excited about Charlie possibly finding a golden ticket in something that isn't a Wonka bar. So it just makes no sense. So it's very obviously a Mandela effect. Would that be fantastic? Don't raise his hopes. Go on, open it. I want to see that gold. uh, Stop it. He's got the same chance as anyone else, but he's this is an interesting line too. He's like, no, you've got more chance because you want it more. So like the people who want the truth more, they're the ones that have a much higher chance of getting a golden ticket to paradise. Go on, open it. Here it goes, and here he's opening the thing that's very obviously not a Wonka bar, and then he pretends to have gotten it, and then he's just like, "Oh, I fooled you. Here's this, moon pie that makes no sense." um, yeah, so this is very obviously a Mandela effect, as I said, and so what is the meaning of this? Well, I was thinking that for starters, the word moon comes up a lot in the Mandela effect, so that's one of a very significant pattern of the Mandela effect is the word moon coming up over and over again. And also, I asked God for some, extra, information or understanding on this change because I wanted to talk to you guys about it. And what pretty much immediately popped into my head was that the moon is associated with, um, um, like, what's the like deception, basically. Um, and I'm not exactly sure what to say about it, but that's what's going on in this scene is it's all like deception, like he's getting this treat that can't possibly have a golden ticket in it, and then he opens it up and he pretends to have the golden ticket, to deceive the family and all that. So I just kind of get this like deception vibe from it. And there's a lot of instances where in movies, when someone is being deceived or when someone is being like hypnotized, you'll see a full moon. And I think this relates to the apex dome. And a couple like animes that I've seen have this happen quite a bit. Like there's this anime called Bleach, which I've shown you guys before, which literally has a character whose name is almost exactly Yorevave, like YHVH, and he literally ascends from a black tower up through a blue beam plasma up into the apex dome in one of the scenes of that show. So I'm just saying that that show is very obviously, world script material. And in that show or anime or manga, the main villain of the show is this guy named Aizen, and his main power is to hypnotize people. And very often, when he's hypnotizing people, they'll show the full moon, in the background or right next to him, or like right before the scene or after the scene. And he's just always being associated with this full moon. And then in another anime I saw that I've shown you guys too, called Naruto, at the end of that story, the main villain rises up into the sky during a blood moon. So you have this full moon, and he casts a spell onto the moon that hypnotizes the whole world. And then almost everyone except a few of the main characters get entrapped in these cocoon pods that are all tied to the dead world tree at the center of the world, and all their energy or chakra life force is being sucked out of them while they're in these cocoon pods. Then the heroes have to save all the people of the world from being trapped in these cocoons, but it all happens during this full moon. And then they all end up in like this while they're in these cocoons, they're in this like fake reality, so it's all about like this hypnotization and deception, and it's all stemming from the apex dome, which the full moon is symbolic of. So that's my thinking on it for now. I know that it's kind of a mouthful and a lot to think about, but I think it all kind of connects to that, where this apex dome area, or at least what's around the apex dome, is what's been captivating the world and deceiving us. It's all from this central North Pole area. And this is that the factory run by that Faruka Salt girl, who's like the worst of the worst, basically. And they have all the workers, slaving away, trying to open up all these Wonka bars. So it's not the moon pie; it's only Wonka bars that she's trying to find this golden ticket. And this is her. She's like, I want it now. And here they're all with the Wonka bars. So just again showing you that the whole movie is about Wonka bars. You know, it's not the golden ticket isn't going to be found in anything else. And then this girl, she finds the golden ticket in the Wonka bar and gives it to Faruka. And then when Faruka gets the golden ticket, this Slugworth guy, who I think represents the devil, he's like instantly right on top of her, just like, hey, you want to make a deal? You know, like, so it's very obvious, you know, devil imagery here. And I'll get more into that later. And here's another scene too where Charlie's grandfather gives him another opportunity to get a golden ticket, and he has a Wonka bar. You know, so why did they give him a moon pie for his birthday? You know, it makes no sense. And this is the scene where Charlie actually gets the golden ticket, and he finds this coin under a grate. And they also put this weird like popsicle stick here with Jopa written on both sides. And I looked up what Jopa means. Do I have it? So I mean, it could apparently refer to this Hebrew word for beautiful or splendid, which actually does sort of make sense. But I kind of get more of like a Jove, Jupiter kind of vibe from this word. So I'm not actually sure what it means, but what I could tell you is that they put it there on purpose. Like in a movie filled with all this symbolism, they wouldn't just have this random word here. And it's also upside down, which is interesting too. And the coin he finds is also upside down or tails up, but it also has this incredible, you know, symbolism on it too. And this is what's known as a mother or a Maria Teresa Taylor or Taller. And this is actually where the dollar comes from, the taller, the dollar. And if you notice, this symbolism here is quite incredible. It's also like the shield with the wings, which I was showing you guys from Lost. And then we have, you know, the double-headed bird or eagle or phoenix, and it looks like, you know, possibly the sun and the moon and the crown at the top and the triple crown and all kinds of symbolism, even possibly the blue beam here. Some people might call it the double cross. But there's, you know, a lot to look at there. Coins in and of themselves, you know, have tons of symbolism in them. So anyway, he gets this coin. He finds this coin. It's also symbolic of him finding the treasure, you know, in the underworld or under the North Pole mountain as well. And when he's walking towards the candy shop to receive his golden ticket to paradise, he walks by like a number of advertisements and like billboards, or not multiple billboards, but multiple, you know, signs and things like that. And I think that they're all important. And the one I would want to focus on is the one that they show the whole time that he's walking to the candy store, and it's this Lufthansa sign in the background. Like they could have shown anything. Like this could literally have anything on it, and they chose Lufthansa. So I looked it up, and it's a German word for air, basically, and it basically means the guild of the air. So it's like joining Jesus in the air once you have your ticket to paradise. So he buys a Wonka bar, and inside the Wonka bar, he gets the golden ticket. You know, so again, showing that that moon pie scene was ridiculous in a Mandela effect. And here you see the Wonka's golden ticket with the apostrophe S. And then all the adults in the street are congratulating him on getting the golden ticket, and they're saying "run straight home." So home is a keyword or a symbolic word for paradise. They're saying take your golden ticket and just run to paradise. Get there as fast as you can. You know, don't stop, don't turn around. You know, it's like Lot's wife turning around and turning into like a pillar of salt. It's like just go. Don't double think it. Don't look back at the physical world. Just go. You know, don't stop till you get there. And then he keeps running, and he's running under this you know, looks like the multi-layer dome type symbolism. He also runs by this peace sign, which is another thing I learned from Jay Dreamers. You know, so Charlie and his grandfather are symbolic of the blue beam, and I'll show you guys that plenty of times in the future here. And he also, of course, has the yellow and blue symbolism, but also this peace sign. He, you know, they could have had him running by anything, and he does run by some other, you know, graffiti type things and symbolism, but they purposefully show this peace sign very clearly as he's running by it, because ultimately this sign, its deepest symbolism is about the blue beam. So you have the pyramidal North Pole mountain, and then you have the blue beam charging below the mountain and then rising up through it. And then, you know, even though this is a circle, of course, it's rising up through this curved ceiling. It's going up through the dome. And he runs into the devil right away. Just one second. And he runs into the devil right away because the devil is this, Kraken entity that guards paradise. So this guy's like, "Hey, you found the golden ticket." Also, they got the ladder symbolism back here too. He introduces himself as Arthur Slugworth. So Arthur is an interesting name too, of course, because I think that's actually a name for God or a nickname for God, because Arthur is King Arthur pulling the sword from the stone. And the name Arthur, well, I've talked about it before, but it has a lot going on with it. The AR, the ART, it's connected to a lot of things. It also, the name actually translates to bear too. So when you see bear symbolism, that's also Arthur symbolism in a lot of these cases. But it's also interesting too that this like devil character has a godlike name, but also it's like a lowly name. So the Slugworth, the slug implies like the low, crawling on the ground, under the ground type of creature, and then worth is like kind of like a monetary name. It's caring about like the physical world and all that. So it's interesting. It's like a fallen version of God, and then it's revealed at the end of the movie that this is all just a ruse. He's just an actor, and he was there just to test these people who got the golden tickets. And he's saying he's got his own chocolate company, and he wants to get an everlasting gobstopper from Willy Wonka's factory. So he's basically saying, will you sell your soul to me and I'll make you rich? And I think that's why it's the everlasting gobstopper, because it's like our everlasting souls. And the gobstopper also has another name or another implication too with the name, because like they're called gobstoppers because it basically it makes you be quiet, essentially. And I think that comes into play as well. Although I don't want to get overly into it, I think I'm more interested in how it's basically their soul. I think it's like a a symbol of their soul, the everlasting soul, and bring it to him so he could find the secret formula, and he'll give him $10,000 or whatever. And you can see how he's like he's got like crazy eyes because he wants this he wants their souls so bad. So Charlie comes running home, and he's like, "Hey, everyone, I got the golden ticket." And they say, read it. So they got Grandpa Joe. So the name Joe is another, right pillar, Christ-like name. And they say, read it for heaven's sake. So they didn't just put that phrase in there for no reason. They're reading it for heaven's sake because this is a ticket to paradise, to heaven. And so this is the ticket. And when he gets his Grandpa Joe out of bed, he makes the Christ pose, and he keeps getting up and down. So this guy's been in this bed for like 20 years or something. They all have. And he's basically, Charlie is like raising him from the dead essentially. So we have like the yellow and blue, blue beam going on with the Christ pose, and he's getting up, and he says, help him up. So he stands up and then he falls back down. So this is like the blue beam going up and down. And then he starts singing his song about getting a golden ticket to paradise, basically. And he says, or he sings, "I never dreamed that I would climb." So keep this in mind with like the blue beam, "over the moon in ecstasy." So over the moon would be over that apex dome. So like the blue beam going up through and over the apex dome. But nevertheless, it's there that I'm shortly about to be going over the moon in ecstasy, because he's got a golden ticket. And to further show how this is all about the North Pole and the North Pole Mountain and all that, and how it switches between Christ and Antichrist control, is Charlie's talking to his grandfather earlier in the movie, and he's saying just before he was like at the gates of the Wonka factory, and this random guy comes up to him and he said, "Nobody ever goes in and nobody ever comes out." And then the grandfather's like, "Well, and right he was, because not since the tragic day that Willy Wonka locked it. And then no one goes in and no one goes out." So this is where that lock symbolism comes in, where paradise is locked away from us. This is like the spinning swords of fire in the Bible, where no one's allowed in or out of paradise at this time until this time is over, which hopefully it soon will be. And that lock, the blue beam is the key that unlocks the lock to paradise. So he says, he locked the gates and vanished completely. But then suddenly, 3 years later, so again, we have this like three returning, like how Jesus goes into the underworld for 3 days and then comes back. After 3 years, he came back, and the most amazing thing happened, and the factory started going again full blast. And then Charlie's like, "But somebody must be helping him at the factory because he can't just do it all himself." And then the grandpa says, "Well, that's the biggest mystery of all." And in the movie's context, that mystery is the Oompa Loompas. So just something to think about. And then going back to this golden ticket, and then they go to Wonka's factory, and I'll just check in with the chat before I get into this section of the movie. Let's see. Oh, got a lot of chats going on here. Yeah, Mark says he doesn't remember a moon pie. Oh, thanks, Bruce. Bruce liked the breakdown of Lost. Yeah, I definitely recommend checking that out, guys. It's a pretty epic breakdown of the TV show Lost if you're interested in the last live stream. Let's see. Jared remembers it was Riddle. I do too. Yeah, SG Razy says the changes are insane. I definitely agree. Hey, Lizzo, good to see you. Let's see. Yeah, E4W is saying they've seen a Frosty toy with the scarf. Yeah, I mean, Frosty the Snowman definitely had a scarf. Yeah, AJ is saying there's a relationship between like the golden ticket and the golden key that Trump gave to Elon and Ronaldo. Yeah, for sure. That's like their crappy inverted you know antichrist symbolism of the Christ-like golden ticket. Jason asks if AI could be changing digital videos. Um, I mean, yes, but I don't think that applies to the Mandela effect. Um, the Mandela effect's been around for a long time. I actually know the first Mandela effects I noticed were back around 1990 when I was just a kid. Hey, Forjax, good to see you. Yeah, Forjax is explaining why it's not AI. Yeah, I mean, the Mandela effect got really big. I think it was 2015. That was way before AI. And I personally have seen physical objects change probably over 100 times at this point. So the more you investigate and look into the Mandela effect, the more you'll see things like that for yourself. And once you're certain that you're seeing physical reality changing, that's when things become real. Oop, sorry, the chat just jumped on me here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Oh, SG Razy is saying the number 9 is associated with illusion and the feminine. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to the number 9 too. I think it's basically the God number, and I also think God is, testing us. So we're in a great deception because it's a spiritual test, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. For Jax, yeah, we're in a reality that can be altered supernaturally. Yeah, Lufthansa is a German airline. Yep. Yep, the devil is also known as the prince of the power of the air. Yep. The beam from the tower. Yeah, the subliminal. Jared saying the subliminal coding in this movie is redonkulous. Yeah, I agree. Wait till you see some of the stuff I'm going to show you guys. It's so crazy. I couldn't believe what I was seeing when I watched this movie just like a week ago. It's like watching it for the first time, with new eyes. I don't know if it's an idiot test. I think it's a difficult test. But I think in a lot of people's cases, their pride blinds them. A lot of people, can't believe that they've been lied to at such a large scale. Things like that. Oh, interesting. Jason saying AI needs gold. Yeah, gold is definitely one of the biggest minerals for that type of thing. Hey, what's up, Biocharisma? Actually, Topher is the one who brought up this in the first place, last live stream. So Thanks to Topher for getting me to rewatch Willy Wonka and to check out this Mandela effect because I didn't even know about it. Aaron thinks Mandela is a psyop. Well, I definitely recommend checking out my previous videos. Like before I started doing the live streams, I have a lot of videos on the Mandela effect. So I would recommend checking out the ones that are like the pattern of the Mandela effect, like the spiritual messages of the Mandela effect and the supernatural patterns, I think it's called, or supernatural keywords of the Mandela effect. Check those videos out, and because I used to think that the Mandela effect was a psyop too, so I totally get where you're coming from. But once I saw how many examples there were, it's 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 way beyond being a psyop. There's no way. And also, like I've said, I've seen things change in my own life. But I understand if you haven't had that happen yet, why you would. I get why people think it's a psyop because I thought that for a few years. Yeah, yeah, it's all good. Um, no, I don't think CERN is behind it. I think basically that this is something that Brian Staveley used to say. I totally agree with. Is um, the system would prefer that most people just don't look into the Mandela effect and don't care about it. But there's going to be a bunch of people who do care about it. So those people get directed to CERN because they don't want people to know that God is doing it. Like the system basically tries to keep people away from God as much as possible. That's why they have the whole globe deception. They want to give people an out wherever possible to be like an atheist and to not be involved in anything supernatural. Um, but like I said, check out my previous videos that I mentioned. I think they'll be pretty eye opening. All right, so getting back to Wonka's factory here. Everyone's waiting for him to come out, and of course, this is the North Pole location. He's got the giant clock tower, and he comes out and he's being deceptive. He's pretending to, be like crippled basically, but then he does like a flip and makes everyone happy. So Gene Wilder even said that he wanted to do this scene. He wouldn't even have done the movie if he wasn't able to do this scene because he wanted to make it so that people didn't know if he was lying or telling the truth the whole movie. And this one scene just exemplifies that whole thing where you just can't tell what this guy's actually thinking, and I think this is God testing us. And here he's welcoming everyone into the factory. And the first thing he has them do is sign this ridiculous contract. And that's the world that we live in right now. It's this world of, maritime law and contracts and all this nonsense and everything. But then when you get to the end of the movie, it turns out that the contract didn't even really matter. All he wanted to do was see Charlie, or somebody be, repentant and make a sacrifice and stand up for the truth and all that, and be a good person, and this contract didn't really matter. This is also an interesting line here too, because Grandpa Joe, he's not as spiritually advanced as Charlie, and we see that in the end of the movie too. But he says, "Sign away, Charlie. We got nothing to lose." But they do have something to lose, their souls. So I think that's pretty interesting, and you can see Willy Wonka looking at him as he's saying that. So here, one thing I talked about in the previous stream, and I'll be talking about it after I finish this Willy Wonka stuff too, is in a lot of these world script movies, when people get close to the North Pole area, their compasses or their navigational equipment starts to go haywire. And that's very similar to what's happening here. Like the characters don't actually have to have like a physical compass in their hand for this to happen. It could just be shown as like a loss of direction or something along those lines. So like when they enter this factory, it's like this weird, maze or like an MC Escher, sketch. So they all get trapped in this weird area and they're not sure what to do. And then Wonka says, "You can't get out backwards. You've got to go forwards." So he's got them all twisted around and turned around like this loss of direction. You better press on. And then there's also a thing going on similar to Alice in Wonderland where they're not sure if things are getting smaller or he's getting bigger. So I think that's what happens at the North Pole also because in like if we're going to live in an eternal reign of Christ, that means time is out, space, it's going to be living beyond time and space essentially. So, they're not sure if he's getting bigger or what's going on. So he's got this tiny door, and how do they get into this paradise area? This is where he says all of his dreams become realities and some of his realities become dreams, which is also very interesting if you think about that in terms of the Mandela effect and how this world changes. Um, and also with after the resets, where a lot of this evil is going to become like a dream, like certain people will remember it, but most people won't, like it never even happened, is what I think will happen. But he has a musical lock to get in there. So this is a music portal. So how many times in these, shows and movies and stuff is there a music portal to get into this type of a location? It happens very consistently. I have a list of it. I'll talk about it in the future too, and I've mentioned it in the past as well. But again, another example of a musical lock. And then he plays a certain song, and this woman identifies it as Rachmaninoff. Now, this is a Russian composer, but what do we see here? It's again with the rock man, so they're all speaking English, so this is, I think, similar to like what I was showing you guys with like Mad Max, like his name is Rockatansky, so they have the rock mixed in with the character there, and in this case, it's the WW character, so he's kind of like the inverted or like the lower uh, version of this, godlike character, or like the North Pole Mountain. But I think this is on purpose. They could have chose any song, but they chose a song that makes this actress say "rock man," and then also we have in off. It's kind of like in the off position, and I'll show you that as well, where it's like God has like this off and on type of thing, where it's like the blue beams down, the blue beams up, that type of symbolism. And also, in case you were wondering, the word or the name Rachmaninoff translates to "son of the merciful one," so it's kind of like son of God. So they open up the music portal and they get to paradise, the Garden of Eden. Of course, what's her face? Faruka goes first, and so they're all looking out at it, and this is what it looks like. And I'm sure in the early '70s it was much more impressive, and it's a pretty impressive set. But movies have come a long way. And there's a lot of North Pole symbolism in all these, like, lollipops. And here we have like that fly agaric symbolism with the red and white mushroom. And there's all kinds of stuff, obviously, the waterfall. So he starts singing his song. And the first line of the song is "Hold Your Breath." So again, we have this, like, I can't breathe, breathing symbolism. And then he says, make a wish, count to three. Three is like the magic number. Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination, which is what paradise would be. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin. So this is like the spiraling up, hopefully, portal. There's also the downward spiral into the abyss. So it's like, the blue beam spirals up to paradise like a drill, and the Antichrist Kraken takes people down the downward spiral into the abyss. But they begin with a spin, traveling in the world of his creation. So he's literally saying that he's God in this case. And what we'll see will defy explanation, because the supernatural cannot be explained in the physical. And this is a problem that a lot of people have. Like, I don't know exactly how the Mandela effect's being done because it's being done supernaturally. I have some theories, but and he says, if you want to view paradise, so he's saying this is paradise. This is the Garden of Eden. Simply look around and view it. We're there. Anything you want to do, do it. And now this kid, Mike TV, he's got the yellow and blue symbolism here too. And there's a lot of weirdness and creepiness in this movie too. I'm not like saying it's like this great thing, frankly, but he grabs like a strand of hair off of Mike TV and he says, "You want to change the world? There's nothing to it." And this is, I think, symbolic of saying like the DNA, because usually like a strand of hair is used in like DNA type things. Then he says, "There's no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free." And this is like a lot of the Charlie symbolism. The name Charles or Charlie comes up a lot, or a variant of that name, because that name means the free man, which I think refers to a lot of the Mandela effects refer to that, like the Charles Lindbergh one, like Charles Lindbergh's lost baby was now found, that type of thing. And his name literally means the free man from the tree mountain. So you'll be free in paradise. This is like actual freedom, whereas we'd all be slaves otherwise in the beast system if you truly wish to be. So a lot of people don't wish to be free. A lot of people want to be slaves of the beast system, whether they acknowledge it or not. And like I said, Charlie and his grandfather are representative of the blue beam. And the first things they grab are these mostly, yellow and blue candy cans. And then Willie says, look at my waterfall. That's the most important thing. So again, we have the waterfall symbolism at the North Pole coming off the mountain. And a lot of these lollipops and other things are they just have very North Pole looking designs to them, like and spiral designs also, like the spinning that he just said. So here's one that's pretty obvious. It looks just like the North Pole map with the concentric circles and the four rivers and the central mountain. And also this Faruka Salt character, she's like the mostly she's the character who's like most aligned with like the Antichrist spirit. And what she's doing here, even though this is like a sphere, all we're really seeing is the dome part of it. And she's literally breaking in through the top of the dome and reaching in. So like the hand reaching in is like the tentacle fingers, like the kraken. And I get this, this is I think this movie is this, subtly symbolic. And she's reaching into the world, and eating it basically. And this is what the kraken is going to do in the plasma apocalypse. It's like in the Matrix movies, like in the third Matrix movie, they're in Zion, which is the North Pole location. They're under a giant dome, and at the top of the dome, the Kraken tentacle monsters come drilling in through the top and invading into their space to kill them. And that's what you're seeing here. It's the same thing. It's just totally different scenario, but it's the same symbolism. And here we have he's got his boat, and he says, "All I ask is a tall ship, the vessel, and a star to sail her by." So keep this star symbolism in mind because it's one of the most important symbols of the world script. This is why the movie like Star Wars is so important and has so many Mandela effects to it. This is also, Star Trek, anything, and there's so many star related Mandela effects. Like, if you guys haven't seen it yet, it's one that hardly anyone talks about. But if you're familiar with the movie Top Gun, Top Gun used to have a star like right in the middle of the two words, top and gun. But if you look at the poster now, the star has fallen below the words. And there's a lot of star symbolism. I've actually talked about it in a number of Mandela effect videos I did in the past. I think you can check out my keyword of the Mandela effect videos for that. And there's even more than what I show in that video. And here they're ringing the bell. The bell is another huge symbol of the world script. And here you can see some more of these. They're kind of like North Pole looking mandala type designs on these lollipops. And of course, we also have the bears all over the place, like the Arthur word. And here, this is almost like a dartboard shape with the concentric circles. And this is kind of like an exploding flower like design. And these also look a lot like, the central North Pole area. And then he takes them all into this tunnel. And this is basically like him traumatizing all these people. And this is, it might not sound like a nice thing for God to do to us, but it's a necessary thing because through this trauma is how we grow as people. And a lot of people, fail the test and don't grow. But the people who do grow do have to go through this type of MK Ultra type trauma in order to grow. Um, and he's basically MK Ultraing all these people, and it's a lot like the scene that I showed you guys in Lost, also. And here they're on the boat, and he's watching their reactions as all these things are happening, and he's showing them a lot of disturbing images. And one of the images he shows them is this guy laying down, and he's got like I think this is like one of those giant millipedes, and it's like crawling over his mouth. But what I see is the "I can't breathe" symbolism. This is like the black kraken tentacle going over his mouth, so he can't breathe. And then they show the all-seeing eye symbolism, and they also show Slugworth, and he's basically the devil or the fake devil. And when they show him, Faruka yells "Daddy" because, like I said, she's like the most, she's like the closest character to this Antichrist, spirit. So like she would be of her father, the devil, basically. And I don't think it's a coincidence that she's yelling "Daddy" right when they show Slugworth. Now, obviously, that's not her physical dad, It's her spiritual father. So Willy Wonka starts singing, and this also relates to that whole compass loss of direction symbolism, because he's saying, there's no earthly way of knowing, and they're all getting scared, and the last people to get scared are Charlie and his grandfather, because they're like us. They can take the punishment, the trauma, and all that, and have fun with a lot of it. Although it does eventually get to them, but the other characters like Faruka and her father, they're instantly scared and they don't like it. So he says, we have no way of knowing, which direction we are going. So this is that, compass symbolism, the loss of direction at the North Pole. There's no knowing where we're rowing or which way the river is flowing. And see here, Charlie and his grandfather, they're the only two enjoying it. The other people are all scared. So this is like that whole thing where, whatever happens, we shouldn't be afraid. And of course, that's easier said than done. I do feel fear once in a while, but we should try to eliminate as much of that fear as possible. And he even starts saying things like, "Are the fires of hell a glowing? Is the grisly reaper mowing?" So this is all about Judgment Day, the separation of the wheat and the tares and all that. And then he starts like screaming, "Yes, it is happening." And then when everyone's finally, had enough, he says, "Okay, we're there." And they get to this inventing room, which is also like, the portal under the dome, and you have like the twin pillar symbolism and all that. And then when they get off the boat, Mike TV says, "Why don't they show stuff like that on TV?" And this is like a joke because they do. Like television is basically nothing but MK Ultra, and the people who are still, watching television and watching the news and following these stories as if they're real, they're getting MK Ultra all the time, and they're not responding well to the trauma. They're being scared more and more by it. Like if you thought the George Floyd thing was real, so many people were traumatized by that. If you thought the Charlie Kirk thing was real, so many people were traumatized by that on different sides of the, political spectrum. One would affect more like the left-leaning people, and one would affect more like the right-leaning people. But all these events, like the Sandy event, the JFK event, the September event in New York, these are all designed. They have world script implications, of course, but they're also designed to traumatize all of us. And then certain people, like, hopefully you and me, we rise above it, and we no longer get traumatized by it. And it actually helped us grow as people. And here they get to the invention room, and you can see more North Pole symbolism. We got like the central tower with the four continents around it, and it shoots up this smoke, straight up like the blue beam. And I'll get to this in a second. I'll just check out the chat for a bit. Hey, a lot of people here. Wow. Thanks, Uncommon Truth Shaman. I appreciate that. Just reading some of your guys' chats. Yeah. Yeah, we just have to be aware of the deception for sure. Yep. Yeah, Drew talking about maritime law. Yep. Yeah, we'll hopefully be free of this beast system soon. Oh, SG is saying that they heard someone say that Mandela means like the man of L's hierarchy. I'm not sure what that means, but I do have a few ideas on the Mandela effect name. I think it was chosen one because Nelson Mandela has like the Son of Man encoded into his name, which is like Jesus, and I think Jesus is ultimately doing the Mandela effect. And also, that's not a Mandela effect for me, frankly. Like I don't remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison or anything. But if that is a Mandela effect, then it's like, the Son of Man no longer died in prison. He was literally resurrected. So it's actually pretty amazing. But also the name Mandela is very similar to the word mandala, which is like the lotus flower and like the that central, North Pole symbol basically, and like the squared circle and all that. And also like if you watch like I Pet Goat 2, and this is I talked about this in one of my very first videos. It's the one with the Statue of Liberty on the thumbnail. Um, when Jesus is reborn into the world out of the cave at the end of that video, there's all these lotus flowers blooming behind him. And I think those lotus flowers both represent us and they also represent the Mandela effect, in my opinion, because a lotus flower is basically a mandala. And it's also very symbolic of us and the world because a lotus flower is actually planted at the bottom of a watery place, like an abyss, and then the flower the stem blooms or rises up through the water, and then it breaks through the water mirror, if you will, and blooms at the top. So that's all symbolic of this whole spiritual journey that we're on, and the earth itself, in my opinion. Yeah, I think Veruca's wearing red and white on purpose as well. Although red and white often is a good thing, but she doesn't have much white. She's mostly red. If it was like half red, half white, I would find it a little confusing. Well, there's just talking to Steen Dan. uh, there's still a star in Top Gun, but the star is now lower than the letters. It used to be between top and gun. Hey, what's up, kiddo Twain? Good to see you. Sorry if I missed any chats. There's a lot here, and it kind of skipped on me. Yeah, we shouldn't be of this world. That's for sure. Yep, there's no growth without discomfort. That's the whole cocoon symbolism because like a caterpillar is like basically traumatized and destroyed inside of the cocoon, but then it's reborn or resurrected as a being that can fly. Hey, Exiliocentric, what's up? Yeah, the Mandorla. Yeah, good call. Thanks. That's another important connection with the Mandela effect. A Mandorla is actually the Vesica Pisces, as G. Razy is saying. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Oh, that's interesting. Ramming Speed is saying the Nobel Prize in 2022 went to a physicist who proved that the universe isn't locally real. It's not real. It can be altered. Like if God wanted to, he could change, the hat I'm wearing. He could change all the posters and stuff behind me in the physical world. The supernatural is above the physical. Oh, interesting. It comes from the word amandel, which is like almond, and the almond is another symbol for the Vesica Pisces too, because it's that shape for sure. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, actually, ramming speed. Check out my previous live stream. I talked all about Lost, and I showed that moth scene as well. And I've shown it actually in previous videos too. But if you're interested in Lost, definitely check out my previous live stream. All right, going back to Willy Wonka. So they're going to this room here, which is basically like the end of the world room. So we have like the open dome. So this is after Domesday or during Domesday, and we're going to see the yellow and blue beam characters rise up in this room, and this is where they steal the fizzy lifting drinks, and this is something that Jay Dreamers talks about too a lot, where how the Earth is going to get depressurized and gravity is going to go away for a while. And one thing too, so this is a dangerous room, and they also start rising for the wrong reasons. The reason that well, here I'll show you. Uh, so just going through some dialogue here. And this is actually very similar to, Pennywise the Clown, there'd be children floating all over, so it's like Down Here Everyone Floats in, the It story, which is also by Stephen King. So, there's also a Penny connection to, Jesus. That's why I think, like, JC Penny is a Mandela effect, and there's a few other things like that. So you have, like, the JC and the penny, so there's this whole rising and falling of Jesus, rising and falling of God. I'm not exactly sure how to, describe it, but that is the, symbolism, and I think what happens, with this world. So here his grandfather is, telling him to basically steal some of this drink. So I think that there's going to be, um, a good time to go to the North Pole and a bad time to go to the North Pole, a good time to rise up into the air and a bad time to rise up into the air, and a good time to go down under the earth and a bad time to go down under the earth. So you might or you might say, like, that's great, but how are we supposed to know which is which? And in that case, I would say that's why we need to develop this communication with God, or the Holy Spirit, so that we know, what we should be doing, if it's a good time to do any of those things or a bad time. And the only way you're going to know that, I think, is if you have a connection to God. So in this scene, they're rising for the wrong reasons. Like I said, they're stealing. So they steal the fizzy lifting drinks. They go up. He's doing like the Christ pose. Um, they're floating. They also do the M handholds because this is a North Pole area right above the broken open dome. And they also compare themselves to a shooting star, a rocket, and a bird, and these are all symbols of the rising, blue beam and the spiritually rising people. And then they're going really high right now. You can see how this is like an open dome. And actually, if you check out 2001: Space Odyssey, the dome scene on the moon, the dome looks just like this. Um, and then they're on wires, they're connected to wires, these actors. And they say you can fly to the moon this way. So there's two interesting things about that. One is, the blue beam shooting up through the real moon, which would be the apex dome, but also the fake astronauts on wires pretending to fly to the moon or to be in the ISS or whatever. They're on these, same, wire rigs that these actors are on. So he's saying, "I'm a bird, I'm a plane." So this is like the Superman symbolism, because we'll all be like Superman if you have the blue beam, activated in you. But then they're going too high and they're in trouble because this isn't a good time to be going up. And they also went up for the wrong reasons. So, and of course, Willy Wonka, the God character, he doesn't help anyone. He's letting people make their own choices. But then they eventually discover that if they burp, they can come back down to the ground. Otherwise, they would have been killed, like a lot of the other children. What happens to them in this story? But then they go to the room of the geese laying the golden eggs, and this is also very interesting because this is also symbolic of God judging people or Judgment Day. And he says we have the egg indicator to tell if the golden eggs are good eggs or bad eggs because the wheat and the tare they look alike. So this egg was a good egg. So they take the good egg and they shine it up. So this, shine like the shining, shining is obviously a good thing. Uh, Shined up and shipped out. But if it's a bad egg, it goes down the chute, basically down into the abyss, and it makes this honking sound. So it's either good or bad. And then Faruka does her whole, song and dance number about how she wants everything right now, and she stands on the egg indicator, and obviously she's not going to be a good egg, so she goes down into the abyss. And Willie says, she was a bad egg. So then her father's like, "Well, where did she go?" And he says, "To the furnace," which could mean hell, but it also I think could mean the world being reset, because it's going to be reset in fire essentially, and it's not going to be a good place to be if you're not in paradise or near one of the smaller blue beams, at least. And her father goes running in after her, and he also was a bad egg because he's the one who spoiled her and was a bad person himself. And Charlie's, he's worried about the kids who seem to be disappearing, and also them specifically, the Faruka and her father, and he's like, are they going to really be burned in the furnace? And then Willie says, "Well, I think the furnace is lit every other day, so they have a good sporting chance, don't they?" So this is interesting because I think like the world resets by water or by fire every other time. So we're probably going to be entering the fire reset. But he's saying, every other day. So I think it's symbolic of that. And then at the end of the movie, after Mike TV gets basically integrated into television because he's like, the people who are, mindlessly watching the news and entertainment all the time. Um, Charlie says, what's going to happen to all these kids who disappeared? But he's God. He's in control of all the souls. He's like, I promise you, they're going to be fine. So like when people die here, physical death isn't the end. So when they leave, they'll be completely restored to their normal, terrible old selves, but maybe they'll be a little wiser for the wear. So if people get another chance at life, and all these religions and mythologies and everything have some kind of resurrection or reincarnation or something going on with people, because if souls are immortal, then they're immortal, they're eternal. So perhaps people need another go around and they'll be a little wiser the next time. So he's saying, anyway, just don't worry about them. It's outside of his control. So, but then he leaves and he doesn't give them, the prize. So the grandfather, he walks into Willy Wonka's room and you could see everything is like halved. And I think this is because he's like a fallen version of God at this time, or like half of God, or something along those lines. And because we're in like this fallen, spiritual world, or like this, testing world, so he's not totally himself yet until Charlie becomes who he wanted him to be. So the grandfather, just one second. So the grandfather walks up to him. He's like, I just wanted to ask you about the lifetime supply of chocolate for Charlie. When does he get it? So Willie's like, he doesn't. He broke the rules. So he's like, I didn't see any rules. So then he gets mad at him and he starts like screaming at them. And he goes into all this detail about how the contract they signed had all this stuff in it. He says, it's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. So we have the black and white central pillar symbolism as well as the crystal symbolism. And then he basically points out how he's been watching them this whole time. He has the all-seeing eye. Even though he wasn't in the room when they stole the fizzy lifting drinks, he still saw them do it. And he says, you stole fizzy lifting drinks. You get nothing, because you've essentially violated the 10 commandments. If you could look at it like that, you lose. So then the grandfather gets mad and he wants to leave and he wants to sell his soul to, the devil basically because of that. But then Charlie, who's the more spiritually advanced of the two, he's, the yellow and blue, the magical child. He doesn't want to, go down the path of revenge. He wants to go down the path of repentance. So he walks back into the room where Willie is, and he says, Mr. Wonka, and then he gives him his soul. Basically, he pledges his soul to God instead of going down the path of revenge and selling your soul to the devil. So then he says, so shines a good deed in a weary world. This is like the few people who actually pass the test. And then he becomes, the real God. And he's like, the test is over, the judgment's over. You did it, you passed the test. And he's, extremely happy. I knew you would, forgive me for putting you through all this. So he feels bad that he had to put everyone through all this stuff. But I'm sure God feels bad about all the trauma and stuff that we have to go through. But I mean, if you think about it, like I know like Matt from Quantum of Conscience often talks about this, where it's like if you have like a really crazy dream and all this crazy stuff happens to you in this dream, and then you wake up from the dream, it's no longer so bad. It's like after this judgment, I think we're gonna feel like okay, this all was necessary, and now we're in the real world with God, walking with God, and this was all a necessary thing, and it actually wasn't as bad as it seemed at the time. And then he introduces him to Slugworth, and he goes, "That's not the devil. Basically, he works for me. He's just there to test you, which is what I think is going on in this world." And you passed. You passed the test. You won. So they're like, won what? He says the jackpot, the grand and glorious jackpot. So here we have the GG symbolism. And then the grandfather's like, you mean like the lifetime supply of chocolate? And he's like, "That's just the beginning, like, who cares about a lifetime supply of chocolate? I'm talking about the blue beam and getting out of this world." So he says, "We'll take the Wonkavator." So he says, "This is the great glass Wonkavator." And then the grandfather goes, "It's an elevator." So he's like, "No, it's a Wonkavator. An elevator only goes up and down. A Wonkavator can go any direction or any place that you want to." So this is like that whole portal symbolism. It's like the room or the mansion with many rooms at the North Pole, where is what I kind of think paradise is going to be. Because like the typical, the typical thing that people say about paradise or heaven is like, sitting on a cloud or sitting on a beach or something, but I don't think that's the case. I think that's, boring, frankly. I think it's going to be, this endless, adventure, really. And that's basically what the Wonkavator can just take you to all these different places, whatever, wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do. And he says, it can take you to any room in the whole factory. And up until now, he's gone to all the different places, but he hasn't pressed this one particular button, which is this, red and white symbolism and concentric circles and all that. He says, "You push it, Charlie." So Charlie pushes the button, and he says, "We have to keep going faster and faster." And notice this like dome symbolism here, with like this like passing through the apex dome symbol here. And he says, "We have to pick up enough speed or else we'll never get through." It's like, get through what? And he's talking about breaking through the dome with the blue beam. And here we have the two blue beam characters and God. And the grandpa's also kind of like a minor God character. And they're like, "Get through what?" And he points up and he says, "You mean we're going through that?" And he says, "Up and out. It'll shatter into a thousand pieces." So this is like, and he says, "Here it comes." And they literally show, it's Wonka Vader, which is symbolic of the blue beam shooting up and through the glass barrier. And this is symbolic of the dome. So here we have the blue beam shooting up through the dome. This is what happens at the, end of the world, doomsday, judgment day, plasma apocalypse. And they go flying high up into the sky. And then Willie's like, "How did you like the chocolate factory, Charlie? How did you like?" And Charlie, keep in mind, is the free man, Charles. "How did you like, paradise?" And he says, "I think it's the most wonderful place in the whole world." And then he says, "I'm pleased to hear you say that because I'm giving it to you." And then he says, "That's all right." And he had to find a child, an honest and loving child, because we're supposed to return to heaven or go to heaven as children, to whom he can tell all his most precious, candy making secrets. All the most precious secrets of the world will be revealed to the people who get the golden ticket and go to paradise and who pass the test. And he's like, "That's why you sent out the golden tickets." Yep, he was looking for someone to replace him. And that's also what happened in Lost, where Jacob was looking, he basically sent out a bunch of golden tickets to the people in Lost. And then he was looking for someone to replace him at the end of that story. So it's basically the same story. So the factory's his. He can move in immediately. He could bring his whole family. So I don't think you need to worry about your spouse or children or whoever. I think God's got control over everything, and you're not going to be like miserable in paradise. So and then at the end he says, "Don't forget what happened to the man who suddenly got everything he wanted. He lived happily ever after." And then they show the blue beam rising up into the sky, and we have all the literally the yellow, blue, and white symbolism, the Columbia blue beam symbolism here. And the first thing that they say or sing at the end of the movie is, "If you want to view paradise." So they went up in the blue beam, shooting through the dome, the yellow, blue, and white symbolism, and they're viewing paradise. All right, so that's Willy Wonka, a pretty amazing movie. I'm glad I got a chance to rewatch it, and I'll just check out what you guys are saying in the chat here. That was a lot of stuff. Oh wow, I don't know if I'll have time to read all this, guys, but it's cool that there's so many people here. Hey, Rolly. I don't know if I said hi to you before, but it's good to see you. Yeah, fear is the mind killer. Oh, I think I read some of those already. Let's see. Yeah, Eric, I actually, I never really liked this movie, to be honest. I know, like, a lot of people, it's, like, their favorite movie or one of their favorites, but, I was never really too into it. I did see it, but, it wasn't, like, a big, movie for me personally. Yeah, Stephen King says all things, serve the beam. Drew questions everything is saying. Yeah, that's, part of the Dark Tower series for sure. Yeah, I would like to reread those Dark Tower books. I just don't think I'll have the time. I'd love to reread the Wheel of Time series too. That's another huge World Script series of books. They're very long though. There's just probably no way I'll have time. Yep. Yeah, the Manly P. Hall quote. Oh, Logos is asking how to get a hold of me. There's an email on the contact page of the YouTube channel. Yeah, just checking out the chats. Eric says Wonka's the devil. Yeah, a lot of people think he's the devil. I think he's God testing us. The devil, I think, is Slugworth. I mean, why would God be in, or why would the devil be in control of all that? Like at the end of the movie, why would the devil be happy that we passed the test? And yeah, Mark is saying that you create your own afterlife. I understand that thought. I just don't think it's true because then that would mean like a murderer could just have like a paradise afterlife. That doesn't make sense to me. I think there's definitely a God who will be judging us, who's been watching us our whole lives. Yeah, 7 seconds. I hope there's no cars or phones in heaven. Yeah, me too. I can't wait to, like, never use a computer again, frankly, or a cell phone. Yeah, Drew's saying the Bible says that, God will make a new heaven and a new earth. Yeah, it's likely gonna be like that, I think. Sometimes when talking about these things, it's we're not really in a position where we could know all the details. Yeah, I do think there will be a new heaven and a new earth. But also the word heaven is, it means several different things, because like, heaven can mean the sky, it could also mean the firmament, and then it could also mean paradise, and, it could also mean, like, the ultimate place that God exists. So, um, the new heaven, I think, will likely mean, like, once the firmament breaks open, then there will be a new firmament, put over the earth after a certain amount of time. I think that's my take on it. But there also may be, like, a new paradise that emerges too. I think that's also gonna happen. Uh, it's annoying when the chat, like, jumps because then I lose my place. Okay, here we go. Yeah, a lot of awesome, comments, guys. And it's cool if we disagree on stuff. I mean, we're never all gonna agree on everything. That's not the way this works. Thanks, 4Jax. I appreciate that. Thanks, Jason. Well, Eric is saying Jesus came already. I think it's like a repeating reset. So we switch between Christ rule and Antichrist rule. So, like, yes, Jesus already came, but he's going to come again as well. That's just what I think. Not sure what you mean by, "Do I think Sonic is the devil?" You mean Sonic the Hedgehog? I think Sonic is more of a Jesus character. He basically represents the spiked ball CV, which is the seeds of the tree of life, which is the blue beam, and he's also got the yellow and blue and white coloring. And hedgehogs are actually they come up more frequently than you would think because they curl up into a spiked ball, so it's that spiked ball symbolism. Like I think in Alice in Wonderland, they're playing was it croquet with the hedgehogs? Or yeah, there's a lot of hedgehogs. You'd be surprised. But anytime you see that spiked ball symbolism, you know. Okay, E4 is saying to check out the book series Deltoric Quest. It has the Shadowlands, symbol for the North Pole, ruled by the Shadow Lord, who took over when they weren't playing the pipes or the sounds. Yeah, that sounds like world script to me. There's also a movie. If you just check this out really quick on Google search or whatever image search, I think there's a movie called Shadowlands, which I never saw, but it has that L under the A Mandela effect. I think you know the logo for it looks Mandela affected, and that L under the A is a very common pattern of the Mandela effect because I know for a fact that it happened in Blade Runner and Black Sheep and a few others. Okay, just more on that book series. It's at the north of the map, and they have to go there and defeat him after getting the 7 gems of their belt. They also come across a box of parasites that controls the people around him, which is all that body snatcher symbolism. Yeah, so whoever wrote that is definitely a world scripter for sure. I've never heard of that book series. Yeah, Satan is the god of this world. Yep, north is the center and south is outward. And esoterically, east is up and west is down. Yep. Yeah, I've talked about how Satan took Jesus to the high mountain. I've actually got a video, if you haven't seen it yet, called Sam and the Highest Mountain. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in there about that type of thing. Hey, Flat Earth Sailor, what's up? Check out the movie Biosphere. I did see that a long time ago. I'd have to hear a little bit more about it for me to rewatch it because I don't know if I could deal with Pauly Shore. But it does have a big dome in it, but I don't know if there's like any other world scripting in it. And actually, I don't even know if it's a big dome. I think it. I don't know. I'd have to relook at it. But my watch list is kind of endless. I've actually been rewatching Twin Peaks lately. It's that's a pretty amazing show too. If oh, he's saying not the Pauly Shore one. Okay, I don't know. Is there another? Oh, Biosphere. Oh, I was thinking of Biodome. Okay, yeah, I haven't seen Biosphere. I'll check that out. But yeah, I've been watching Twin Peaks. It's pretty amazing actually. If you haven't seen it, I would say it's probably like the second biggest world script show after Lost. If you haven't checked either of those out, I highly recommend them. Oh, nice, 4Jacks. The you read the yeah, I'm sure the Conan books are awesome. I actually have a bunch of the Conan paperbacks. I just haven't had a chance to read them yet. Um, but the covers are really cool artwork that I like. But yeah, the Wheel of Time books are epic. They're really long though. Each book's like 1,000 pages. Tony. Yep. Yeah, that's interesting, Tony. All right, just 1 second. All right, I'm gonna try to get through some of these compass malfunctions again. So just to reiterate what I talked about in the previous stream, this is like an aviation compass. This is like a nautical compass, just in case you're not familiar with how they look. These old compasses also have the fleur de lis in place of the N for the north. So I talked about that a lot in the previous stream. If you want to check that out. Also, we have this, compass Star of Bethlehem type symbol that's often put at the North Pole. All the compass needles would point to the center of the world, regardless of where you're at. And then once you get to the center of the world or near the center of the world, the compass generally starts malfunctioning because of the magnetic, abnormalities, and also because you're at the location that it's pointing to. So I talked a lot about Lost. Okay. Um, so this would be like the black rock at the center of the world, and of course, Lost on the Lost Island, there's a location called the Black Rock, among other things. And here's a I talked about Lost so much in the previous stream. I'm not going to get too into it, but you could just check out all these symbols, heavily symbolic of the world script all around the Lost Island, and just a couple quick scenes of the compass malfunctioning, just to refresh your guys' memory. When they're flying towards the island, the pilot Frank, he needs a cheat sheet from this physicist named Faraday, like a Faraday cage, which is also again the plasma, electric symbolism. And he's not able to just use his compass to get to where he's going. He needs this special positioning in order to get there. So Saeed's like, you don't know where your boat is. He's like, I know where the boat is. It's just he can't get there under normal means. And then they also show the compass fluctuating between 30 and 33, which is like the Christ symbolism. And they also have to fly through this storm in order to get to the island. So Saeed's like, why are you flying directly into the thunderhead? And he's like, just let me do my job. This is how it has to be done. And they fly through the storm, lightning crashes, and they show close-ups of this, 30 to 33. And here's another scene from Lost where Locke notices on Mr. Echo's stick here, he has written, lift up your eyes and look north. So Kate's saying, why do you want to get Jack back all of a sudden? He's like, it's not about motivation, it's about knowing where to look. It's like, we finally have a compass bearing. I'm pretty sure if we follow it, it'll lead us right to him. So she's like, well, how did you get this compass bearing? So then Saeed sarcastically says, because of the way the sunlight hit Mr. Echo's stick when John was burying him. So like, this is like, the signs that this world shows us, or that God shows us on what we should be doing and where to go. And in this case, it's lift up your eyes and look north. And then in this scene here, where Locke, who's been body snatched, he shows Desmond this well, and they drop this torch down into the well. So this is like the abyss, and wells are often symbolic of going down into the abyss or into the underworld, of course. And he says, do you have any idea how old this well is? So he says, very old. And he's like, yeah, that's right. It's very old, because this is symbolic of the well at the North Pole, the abyss. And this is also where the blue beam charges up. And Desmond is also a Jesus character, and he gets thrown into this well. So he gets thrown into the bottom of the well, and then he rises up from the well because he's symbolic of Jesus and the blue beam. So he just so then Locke says, this well is so old they had to dig it by hand. So Desmond says, well, it's a lot of work just to get some water. So then Locke says, well, they weren't looking for water, they were looking for answers. And then Desmond's intrigued by that. So he says, a long time ago, places like the one that we're standing at right now made compass needles spin. And he does like a spinning motion with his fingers. And the people holding the compasses needed to know why. So they dug. And that's just a couple of quick examples of how they have the compass needle spinning and acting strangely in Lost. And if you're interested in Lost, like I said, check out my previous live stream, and I show a bunch more examples of the compass needles and a ton of stuff from the show. It's I think it's very interesting. So here we have on Kong Skull Island, big, huge King Kong movie. All these Godzilla and King Kong movies are huge world script movies. In order to get to King Kong's North Pole Island, they have to fly through this storm. Interesting symbolism. And on the helicopter here, and I showed this in the previous stream too. I'm just recapping really quick so you guys see how this compass needle thing is in so many of these world script stories. And then I'll get to some of the new material here. So here's the compass going crazy on the helicopter as they're flying through this plasma storm, and it's a massive plasma storm like the end of the world and getting towards the North Pole. And they eventually get to the split mountain at the North Pole. And this is like the eye of the storm. So there's this, raging plasma storm all around this paradise area. But then once you get to paradise, it's calm. And in Mad Max Fury Road, I've talked a lot about these Mad Max movies in the previous live streams. If you're interested in them, definitely check them out. Um, there's a scene, the whole movie's kind of like this giant car chase, and there's a point where, and all the main set pieces in this movie are all symbolic of the North Pole. And they have to fly or they have to drive through this giant plasma storm. And when they go through the plasma storm, his this like nautical, compass that Morton Joe must have found, after the after like a reset. He has it in his main car, and the compass is spinning all around because they're entering this magnetic storm. And here's the storm. And in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, this is the latest Indiana Jones movie. They have to fly through this portal in a storm, and as they're going through this portal that transcends space and time, their compass in their plane is spinning all around. And when they fly through the portal, they basically get to Judgment Day with all the Kraken smoke tentacles all over the place, and they meet this character who's Archimedes, but he's symbolic of God. So again, we have this arc, symbolism, and I talked about this in the previous stream as well. Why he's symbolic of God, and they don't want to get stuck there. The portal's closing, so that woman that he was with basically knocks Indy out, and then he returns home after meeting and communicating with God. And when he's home, which is paradise, he has his dial, which is next to the phone because this is symbolic of a communications device with God. And he also has his spear or a blue beam or the tip of the spear. And he's with, the people that he loves. And he's got the G. They could have had, this is like a huge Indiana Jones movie. They could have had anything here, but they showed this G, like the center of the map, which is the North Pole and paradise. And this is basically like, Adam and Eve returning to paradise. And in the show Under the Dome, which is made by Stephen King and Steven Spielberg and some other world scripters, they have another abyss scene. So this is like when they throw the torch down into the well in Lost, they throw this, light or torch thing down into, or flare or whatever, into this bottomless pit, which is the abyss. They find this abyss under the school. It disappeared into the darkness. How is that possible? It didn't land. And then he says, the same way the dome is possible. So the bottomless pit is just as reasonable as a dome. So he says, got any ideas where this cliff might lead to? The laser pointer doesn't reach the other side. And then this woman here, she's a science teacher, and she says, even stranger, my compass is spinning. So then she shows her compass, and it's spinning all around because they're at this North Pole location right over the abyss. And it says we're facing every direction at once. And then the main character Barbie, he goes down into this darkness, into the abyss to see what's down there. And he says, I think I'm getting closer. And then he goes through this portal and he winds up in the real world outside of the dome. And in this movie, Annihilation, the scientists are all going into this dome, central North Pole area where there's ultimately a lighthouse, which is the center of everything, which is symbolic of the mountain at the North Pole, the pyramid, the mountain of fire and light, and also our bodies. The top of our head, we should hopefully be, like I said, like with the Kelly's Blue Book. Like we should be bright-headed warriors. Like a lighthouse, the with the light at the top. And when they're inside of this dome, one of the characters says to Natalie Portman, "Oh, you're finally awake." And she says, "Give me a second. I'm a little disoriented." And she's eclipsing the sun with her head. This is the eclipse central, North Pole symbolism, which is where the two pillars converge and merge. And then this one character says, you don't remember setting up camp, do you? So there's this loss of memory. So memory being lost and given is always tied to this North Pole area too. And she says she doesn't remember anything after reaching the tree line. They say none of us do. And then she says, then this other girl says, I've been checking my comms and nav equipment, and anything that sends a signal out of the shimmer, which is what they call this domed area, is down. And she says, check this out. And she shows her compass, and her compass needle spins all around. So we've got no compass, no comms, no coordinates. And then this Jennifer Jason Leigh actress, she's like the leader of the group. She says, we weren't really expecting the comms equipment to work. I mean, there's been 3 years of expeditions into this area and 3 years of radio silence. So here we have the 3 and 3, the 33 symbolism, and also at the North Pole, the Rupus Nigra mountain is said to be 33 miles wide. So, and also, of course, Jesus is said to have ascended or resurrected and ascended at 33. And then ultimately, it leads to Natalie Portman getting to this lighthouse, which is also taken over, at least in part, by the Kraken. You can see the tentacles over the left side of it. This also relates to the lighthouse in IPECO 2, and I've talked about this a lot in the past. I don't want to get overly into it because I want to get into this movie Contact, which this is how I ended the previous stream because I didn't quite get to finish what I wanted to talk about then, but I'm really glad I got to check out the Willy Wonka stuff. So Contact, this is a Mandela effect where the C is merged into the O. So you could see it here on the poster. It wasn't like this for sure. And here, this is like the title of the movie if you actually watch it. And this is also a Robert Zemeckis movie. He's the guy who made Back to the Future and Forrest Gump and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So, huge world scripter. And Contact is another big world script movie, and it's all about. Sorry, there's like a piece of dust or something, but it's all about establishing uh, contact or communications with her spiritual father, with God. And she uses like this, third eye portal at the end of the movie to transcend space and time so that she could get to paradise and speak with God and meet God. And I'll just check in with the chat and get a drink. Let's see. Just trying to find my place in the chat. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I mean, I kind of ultimately think God is basically everything. Oh, um, someone's asking me more questions about Sonic. I'm not like super familiar with the Sonic stuff. I'd have to look at it again. I still have to watch the third Sonic movie actually because the first two blew me away really with all the stuff. I have like a ton of like screenshots and stuff, and I've talked about it a bit in the past. Oh, Bluebeam's asking, nice name. um, do we follow our compass south after the pole shift to get to the mountain? I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna follow the Holy Spirit. I think that's what we need to follow. Yeah, maybe Eric. Yeah, I mean, it's something like that. I do think that we're being saved out of a very bad place, frankly, but it's also a test. Yeah, Ron Walker knows what's up with Philip Jeffries. That's awesome. Yeah, Tony, I mean, like I said, I'm just gonna be following my connection to the Holy Spirit. That's the only thing I'm gonna trust. That's interesting, Eric, about I'm not familiar with Jesus talking about his brother like that. I'd have to look into that. But it seems to me like Jesus and Lucifer are basically like twins for all intents and purposes. They're basically the twin pillars. Yeah, Jay. What's up, man? He says, rip original Dave Chappelle, yeah. I hope he's still alive somewhere, but he's definitely not on the world stage anymore. Okay, yeah, I'll look into that. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely don't think Jesus is Lucifer. This person says y'all have no idea what's going on. Have you watched any of these live streams? Yeah, now we're getting down. See, like the religious rabbit hole. These are just things that we can't possibly know at this time. I think people spend a little too much time on that. Some people in the chat getting negative here. What's going on here? Just keep it civil, guys. It's okay if we don't all agree. All right, guys. Let's try to be kind to everyone and note that none of us are ever going to agree on everything. And also, we're just not in a position where we can know all the intricacies of God and the devil and Jesus and Lucifer and all that. It's ridiculous to think that you can know that. All right, so getting back to Contact. Starts off with the character Ellie when she was a girl. Note that her name is Ellie. She's got the EL, the godlike name. And this is her father. And she's all about communicating. She's really into radios and communication. And she draws this picture of paradise because she contacted a faraway place, I think in Florida, and she drew that. But this is really a picture of paradise that she drew, and her nickname is Sparks. And we see Sparks come up quite a bit in all these world script movies. When generally when people like when Captain America is being made, you have sparks going off all around his cocoon. You know, sparks are happening like when well, I've talked about it quite a bit. I'll bring up the sparks thing in the future, but it's really all about like us evolving spiritually, our this third eye communication with God and all that. So she's on her radio. She says she needs a bigger antenna. This equates to like needing a bigger boat, needing a bigger house, like the Jaws Mandela effect that I've talked about quite a bit, where in the movie Jaws, where there used to be we're going to need a bigger boat, but now it's you're going to need a bigger boat. I think that's like a message from God saying that we're going to need a bigger vessel, and we're also going to need like a bigger antenna, like in the X-Men movies when the Antichrist Kraken character is inside of Mr. X's head. He says you're going to need a bigger house. It's all this same symbolism like that. We're going to need a bigger vessel, a bigger communications device in order to pass this test and establish this communication with God. And the bigger antenna that she goes to is this place called Arecibo, and I'll show you what that means in a second here. This is also Matthew McConaughey, who's got the MM symbolism, and that doesn't mean that every movie that he's in, he's playing this MM role, but he is when it's a world script movie like this. And I also showed you like in the Dark Tower, he certainly is. So he's like the MM mountain. He's also the spiritual side, and Jodie Foster is like the atheist. So she's saying, does it show that she went to Arecibo? And what Arecibo means here is basically the people from the rock or the stone. So this is again the North Pole symbolism here, which is where she went to get her bigger antenna. And then he says he offers her a cracker jack, like we were talking about before. And she says no, and this introduces himself as Palmer Joss. So we have like this Jesus-like name and the Palmer, and her name is Ellie Arrowway. So we have like the God-like name, and Arrow is like the blue beam. So he says, "Nice to meet you, Ellie." And then he's talking about SETI, which is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And that doesn't necessarily mean little green men. Extraterrestrial means God in this case. She's searching for, she doesn't realize it, she's an atheist, but she's searching for this communication with her spiritual father. And when he says that, he pulls out this prize from his Cracker Jacks, and it's a compass. And this compass keeps going back and forth in this show. So he gives it to her, and then she says, "You better keep this. It might save your life someday." And they have this relationship and this back and forth, and they keep passing this compass back and forth to each other. And they have. Let me just check the chat, make sure everything's all right. I see the chat moving quite a bit. I just want to make sure there's nothing too negative going on here. Mhm. Hey, what's up, Blue Pac Man? Ah, chat jumped on me. Where's I was just checking out the chat. Yeah, it seems like things cooled down a bit. So religion's like such a hot topic, and it's basically a lot of things that we can't possibly know about. All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. All right, so we have the Larry King show in contact here, and he says his guest tonight is this Matthew McConaughey guy, and he's got this whole book that he's pushing called "Losing Faith: The Search for Meaning in the Age of Reason." I think it says. So he says we're becoming a synthesized society. We have mindless jobs, take frantic vacations. Is it any wonder that we've lost our sense of direction? So again, with this, compass symbolism and not knowing where to go. And then here's a scene where Jodie Foster receives the signal, which is essentially from God, and she opens her eyes. So she's basically becoming awake. She hears the signal, and now of course, what she says here isn't nice and all, but they do use the word holy. And of course, I'm not saying Hollywood is like great or anything either. They could certainly be making fun of God in this situation, but what she's doing is she's giving the word holy to this communication that she's receiving. And then she calls her people at the station, and she's telling them all this stuff, and she's like, "Hey, is anyone awake in there?" Because like the awake people are the ones who hear this communication from God. So they're checking through this interferometry, and it's the signal is coming from this place called Vega. And I don't want to get too into it because the stream's already way too long. But there's a whole lot of connections between Vega. It apparently used to be like the previous Polaris, which would be the North Pole star. And like there's all this stuff with Las Vegas and Elvis and all that stuff with him being in Las Vegas, and there's a lot going on there. And Las Vegas has a giant black pyramid with a blue beam shooting out of the top right next to the Excalibur. So there's something going on with Vega and Las Vegas, being the previous like paradise and all that. I don't know exactly what it is, but it comes up a lot. So they say it's only 26 light years away. And 26, when this number comes up, that's like the God number because the word God equals 26, and also MM equals 26 because M is 13. So she scanned Vega a bunch of times when she was at the North Pole Mountain, but it was always negative. But now it's back. So this is like the return of Christ. It's the switching between Antichrist and Christ rule at the North Pole. And then they also even just yelled out Jesus. So for a bunch of like atheists, like this often happens where atheists say Jesus and Jesus Christ all the time, and they see this frequency, and it's like the trident. It's like the twin pillars and the central pillar here, or like Jay always talks about. It's the central uh, pillar, and then you have the anode and cathode on either side, and it's like the Neptune's trident basically. And they're receiving these signals, and it's all these prime numbers, and it stops at 101. So it's all the prime numbers up to 101, and again, 101 is like the twin pillars with that like portal gateway in the center. And then they say the signal's been transmitting for 26 years. So again, this reinforcement of the 26 God number. And when they get to this, when word gets out about this, communication from extraterrestrial life, all these people set up shop, right outside this communication array. And here again, we have the Vega or bust. So we have the the Vega symbolism and also the Wizard of Oz symbolism too. And they played the song "Purple People Eaters." Well, I saw the thing coming out of the sky. It had one long horn and one big eye. I commenced to shaking and said, "Ooh, looks like a purple people eater to me." So this is actually something Jay's talked about quite a bit too. And I don't want to get overly into it, but this is all the one eye symbolism, the end of the world, plasma apocalypse. Here we have like I'm already over 2 hours, so I really want to get through all this. So I'm just going to kind of go through all this real fast. Sorry. And you guys, and it's important for you guys to come to your own conclusions and to see the symbolism for yourself as well. So if I just like go fast through a bunch of pictures, you can see the symbolism. So they have this guy shooting out of the cannon. This is like blue beam symbolism. Next stop Vega, the Wizard of Oz symbolism here again. We have the Jesus is an alien, and this is also like the UFO apex dome type. So what you're seeing here actually is like the blue beam of Jesus shooting up through the apex dome, basically. And then also we got Elvis Elvis comes up constantly and he says Viva Las Vega, and then here we have Beam Me Up. This is a huge Mandela effect as well. It relates to the blue beam. We have this choir singing, and they're singing Hail to Vega instead of Hallelujah. And then we also have her getting this communications from this guy who's basically like the Willy Wonka of this story. And it's also next to this lamp that looks just like the plasma that we talked about in previous streams and that Jay talks about too in his videos. And just like this plasma experiment by this scientist, Anthony Peratt. This looks like the lamp. And if you think that's just a coincidence, then just take note of all the other symbolism that's in this movie and think that did they really put this lamp here because it's pointless or a coincidence. I think it's on purpose. Like these people aren't going to put a lamp or a light in a shot and have it mean nothing. That's not the way they work. The lamp is the blue beam. It's the ultimate lamp. It's the Lamb of God. The lamb is also very similar to lamp. Those two words, you just flip the B upside down. It also looks like it's under the dome right here as well. So we have these shapes that you could find on like cave art and stuff like that, like Jay has talked about many times as well. And just I've talked about this too in previous live streams. So if you're interested, just check out my previous live streams. Check out Jay's channel, and she has mail. She got mail, which is another thing that often happens. Like I was showing you in Stranger Things, the Alice in Wonderland girl gets mail. She has to go to the mailbox, get the mail out, and it's a communications. It's a map for her to get to the North Pole, Split Mountain. So in this case, the mail that she's getting is that Ellie Arroway is getting, and it's also the blue and white Columbia coloring here on the screen. It's an explanation as to what the communications from the extraterrestrial life means, what God's communication means. So it's kind of like an email saying, this is what, the symbolism means, this is what the Mandela effect means, that type of thing. So she goes to meet this godlike figure, and his name's Mr. Haddon. And here's what Haddon means if you're interested. I guess it's related to the word Heather. And so he says, I've had my eye on you a long time. So this is like the all-seeing eye. Note also that this is a Robert Zemeckis movie. This isn't like a mistake in lighting. So they create this shadow. And this is like the Janus god. This is like the light god and the shadow god type of symbolism here. So he says, I consider you one of my most valuable long-term investments. This is also like Willy Wonka, and you have like the MM, and then you have the inverted WW. So he shows that he's been watching her his whole life, and he has the all-seeing eye cameras. And she was at Arecibo at the Black Rock, and then he's showing her the 63,000 communications, and he says, in order to piece this together, we have to think in multiple dimensions. So in order to get to paradise, in order to be in the eternal reign of Christ, this is going to be like a higher dimensional state of being. So in order to solve this puzzle, he pieces it together three-dimensionally, and they were trying to piece it together two-dimensionally. So this is how it all connects, is by thinking in a higher dimension, which is how you eventually understand the Mandela effect, because it's being done from a higher dimension supernaturally. So she brings this to the White House, and she says, it's our belief that the message contains instructions to build a machine. So they're like, a machine to do what? So she thinks it's an advanced communications device or a teaching machine, which is what I would think. But then, of course, you have people saying it's a doomsday machine, it's some kind of trick. Um, then, James Woods is like, we poor saps build the thing and we just blow ourselves to kingdom come, which is an interesting phrase. Um, and she says, the message was written in the language of science. If it was supposed to be religious, it should be like a burning bush or a voice from the sky. And then Matthew McConaughey chimes in and he's like, but a voice from the sky is exactly what you found. So one of the things I really like about this movie is um, the spirituality and science actually do go hand in hand. We're just in a world that thinks that they're totally divided, but they're actually one and the same. If you're after the truth, then the spiritual truth is going to match the scientific truth. And here they're talking about Occam's razor right next to the Blue Beam Washington Monument. And basically, Occam's razor is something a lot of like naysayers like to bring up. Like what's the simplest explanation? Like with the Mandela effect, the simplest explanation is just people misremembering things. It's like, okay, well, that would be true if you discount of pieces of evidence. In order to apply Occam's razor, you have to account for all the evidence first, and then apply Occam's razor. You can't just like pick and choose what you want to look at, and then say like, well, according to Occam's razor, it's what I think. In the truth community, where people say, Occam's razor, this and that, you're not accounting for over half of the evidence. So here we have the device that they set up, which is like the Ezekiel's wheels within wheels. And this is like the third eye portal, essentially. And this is the first one they build that actually gets blown up. And the guy who's going to be going in it, he says, when we release the pod, a substantial amount of energy will be generated. And the pod is like the cocoon, essentially, that they sit in. And cocoon and pod symbolism comes up a lot. I've talked about it a lot in previous streams. So here's a view. And they also show the Vesica Pisces binoculars. So this is like the two worlds merging with this, third eye portal. And here they're showing the pod. It goes down into the center of the rings. So here we have like the Lord of the Rings, the central, bullseye and the concentric circle, dartboard shape, and into the machine's core. So this is like, obviously the core of the center. So this is also like the spiked ball symbolism here. Some people believe the rings function as some sort of accelerator. Others believe it might open up a doorway to another dimension. So basically, what it is it is an accelerator, and it does open a doorway to another dimension. That's what's inside all of us, and this is what inside of our third eye, which is our pineal organ. There actually are microscopic crystals that are called piezoelectric crystals that spark. So here we have the sparks symbolism, which Ellie's nickname is literally Sparks. So these crystals, they spark, and and it's even thought that these, it's not proven, but it's thought of that these sparks give off like a light blue light, just like the blue beam. So we literally have like this blue beam inside of our heads that we all are hopefully evolving and becoming in tune with for preparing for the end of the world. And we have this crazy psycho terrorist guy who blows up the first one. This is Jake Busey. So he blows it up. And then they show his like manifesto type thing on the news, and he's talking about the apocalypse. So in this movie, like if you think of it like from a normie point of view, you just go to see this movie Contact about establishing a connection to aliens. So why are they talking about the apocalypse? And then he's talking about faith and the apocalypse and all that. And then Matthew McConaughey hands her his compass back before she goes into the next device. And he says, I don't want to lose you. Now you can find your way home. So this is, again, his paradise. It's also, Adam and Eve, the merging of the twin pillars, masculine and feminine, at the central North Pole area. And here's the new machine that Ellie is going to get into. And there's the cocoon pod. So she sits on the throne inside of the cocoon pod. So this is like the throne in our temple. And Elle is sitting on the throne. And we have the wheels within wheels spinning all around. And it's becoming like translucent. So this is like a clear barrier similar to a dome, or like the small dome at the North Pole. And they're also losing communications. So what you'll often see in these movies is a communication breakdown, and then hopefully a reestablishment of communication later. So they're saying, can we boost the signal? So think about how people got their booster shots. That was boosting their signal to the Antichrist. And then here we have a loss of communication. It's becoming translucent, some kind of electromagnetic field around her. And then it starts sparking and becoming very bright, and there's a rainbow around it. And then this guy literally says, "My God." They could say anything, but he says, "My God." And then here, this is from my previous videos. I know you guys sometimes can't see this because of my camera, but here, Ellie sits on the throne inside the sparking third eye portal vessel, and she's saying she's okay. So this is like Captain America, where he's inside the cocoon pod, and they're turning him into Captain America, and all the sparks are going off, and they're saying, "Stop it! This is too much for him." I could hear him screaming. He's going through a lot of pain and torture and trauma, like we saw with like in Willy Wonka, and he's inside the cocoon yelling, "I'm okay. I can deal with it." And that's like what we have to be like. If we keep pushing through and rising above all this trauma, we eventually become at an evolved state where we can return to paradise. So she's saying, "I'm okay to go." Uh, inside everything, inside the core, the weather is beautiful. So that's like the eye of the storm again, the symbolism, like I was showing you with the King Kong movie. Like you get through that storm, and when you're in the eye of the storm, it's actually very peaceful, and that's where paradise is, at the center of the world. So they drop this core down into um, the device, but she's essentially going down into the abyss, which is where we learn the truth under the mountain. Now, you don't want to get stuck down in the abyss, but you do have to go down and then rise back up like the phoenix. And we learn the truth under the mountain. This is where the treasure is, or, inside the mountain, under the mountain. So she's going down through this wormhole, and she's trying to communicate, saying, "Ellie to control, do you read me? I'm going through some kind of tunnel. There's a light source up ahead. It's brilliant, and it's this blue white light." She literally says blue white. So she's gone down into the abyss, and she sees the blue beam charging down in the abyss. And she says it's a star. It's Vega. And then again with the wormhole, this is like Vesica Pisces worlds merging symbolism. Not quite Vesica Pisces, but it's like that. So she's going through, and then she becomes like a split person. So this is like how we all have this dual nature, and if you actually look into it, our two brain halves are like literally like two different people, and we're going to be merging into one person, which is another thing that happens at the end of the world, in my opinion. And I've talked about that a lot. Um, so you see her splitting into two different people here. This is like her twin pillars. She's in a subway transit system. Oh God, she's still splitting into two people. And then here we see the concentric circles. This is like the North Pole area that she sees. And then her compass breaks away. She had it on as like a necklace, and her compass is floating, and she sees it spinning all around. And then she grabs it, and then we enter her one eye portal. Now, to be honest, I don't know why it's a left eye. I would have assumed this would be a right eye portal situation. So it's definitely the one eye symbolism. And to be honest, I don't know why they chose the left eye instead of the right eye. Maybe you guys might have an idea on that. But the left eye is usually more like related to the physical world, the destruction. Like the right eye is more like the Christ like spiritual preservation pillar. Now you could have a good person be a destroyer, and you could have a bad person be a preserver. So I could see why sometimes like a bad person has like a right eye portal thing going on, or a good person has a left eye portal, because sometimes things need to be destroyed in a good way. Like if you clean your bathroom, you're destroying all the the mold and the bacteria and stuff, but that's a good thing. But in this case, I don't know why they chose the left eye, to be honest. But it is the one eye symbolism, the eye portal. So they go into that portal, and she arrives at paradise. And now she's standing on the shores of paradise. She looks up, and this is like the spiraling apex dome type symbolism. And she points out, and there's a protective dome barrier around her, because she's still in that cocoon pod. But it also is symbolic of the small dome at paradise at the North Pole. And while she's at paradise, her spiritual father comes to greet her. And now this is presented in the movie like it's the alien just assuming the form of her father, because that's what she would be comfortable with. But in a symbolic level, she's meeting with her spiritual father, who is God, at paradise. And he says, "Hi, Sparks." He missed her. He's sorry that he couldn't have been there for her in that whole time, that trying time, that, testing time. Um, here, so she transcends space and time, like we see in Back to the Future. He transcends space and time, and in a bunch of other movies, you have to transcend space and time. And in Back to the Future, which is also another Robert Zemeckis movie, Marty McFly, who's also the MM, he uh, basically becomes the blue beam and then ends up inside of a church. If you watch the end of the first movie, and it's literally called. Uh, it's the Church of Jesus, but it's like I forget the exact phrase that it has. It's something like the followers of Jesus or something like that. But just watch the end of Back to the Future. I've talked about it too in the past in previous videos too. Um, yeah, and then she's saying none of this is real. When I was unconscious, you downloaded my memories. So like there is something too where our memories are going towards to God in this paradise area too. That's why there's a lot of Mandela effects about memory. Like the famous Bob Hope song was "Thanks for the Memories," but now it's "Thanks for the Memory." So I think it's like God saying thank you to us for these memories. Um, we thought it'd make things easier if you looked like him. Uh, so she says, "Why did you contact us?" And he says, "You contacted us. We were just listening." So it's like, God waiting for us to contact him. He doesn't always contact us first, possibly not ever. So what happens now? He says, "You go home." So going home is like going to paradise symbolically. This was just the first step, and then this is like kind of like the end of the world, like those smoke plumes that come out from the sky, and then she goes back to the real world, and they all think that it was like a malfunction because she was operating in a place that was beyond space and time. So to everyone else, it looked like she didn't go anywhere. And then so they have this whole, trial where they're like, did anything even happen? And hardly anyone believes her. But Matthew McConaughey believes her. And just think about, these two characters that we're left with at the end of the movie. You have the MM and the Ellie, Sparks Arroway. So we have the mountain and the blue beam, and they're together, male and female as well. And also like, Adam and Eve. And this is just like in Stranger Things. So we have Modine, who's the MM character, he runs the North Pole mountain area, and L, the character L. So it's like literally MM and L, and you have MM and L. And this isn't just like a coincidence or something. This is on purpose by these writers and casting directors and the people who are in charge of these projects. And here you have like MM and L doing the M handhold under the dome. And here we have MM and L. And he says, as a person of faith, he's under a different covenant than Dr. Arroway, who's like an atheist in the movie. But he says, the goal is one and the same, the pursuit of truth. And he says that he believes her, that she went, and basically contacted God, although in the movie it's an alien. And then they do, the M handhold in the car. And they're also at, the Capitol, which has a ton of symbolism I don't want to get into now. This is also a random B movie. I don't want to get into too much, and I haven't even seen the movie. I'm just aware that it exists. But it has the blue and white coloring. It has the name Contact and Making Contact. So I don't notice anything about this that would be a Mandela effect. So I'm just saying, all the letters are separate. In the future, if anything is different, it's just something to keep in mind because I think it has a high probability of changing. And also, you have like this blue beam symbolism, portal, and all this crazy stuff going on. All right, so in a Truman Show, let me just check in with the chat and get a drink of water. And just checking out the chat. Oh, a lot of awesome chats, guys. There's a lot of people watching today. That's awesome. I don't know if I'll have. I got to kind of wrap up the stream here soon. My voice is kind of gone, but I appreciate all the chats, guys. Thanks, Jay. Yeah, North Pole time dilation. Yeah, if you have anything like specific to say, if you put like at C3PO, I'll see it. But I'm gonna have to keep going here because my voice is almost gone. All right, so in the Truman Show, the True Man Show, starring JC, and his name is also Mandela affected. It has an extra R now. enclosed in the largest studio ever constructed, which is a giant dome. And even the island area looks like a dome shape here. And then they show the giant dome. So they're literally telling you in this movie all about somebody waking up from a fake world that they're inside a giant dome. Um, 30th great year. Here's the all-seeing eye camera, and now Ed Harris's character, he's basically the god character of the movie, and he's also very similar to Willy Wonka, I would say. And there's a big connection there too, which I'll get into in a bit. It's the Truman Show. So at the end of the movie, and I have a really good video on the Truman Show if you want to check it out. It's a shorter video, maybe like 10 minutes, and I think it's like my most popular video. But definitely check that out if you haven't seen it because it's going to get into a lot of stuff that I'm not going to get into here. But at the end of the movie, you see the concentric circles and also the dome umbrella and also the duck symbolism, like they had in Joe versus the volcano. And JC is pretending to be asleep down here in the underworld because he's in the basement of the North Pole house. So he starts off in the North Pole paradise, but it's a fake paradise. So this movie is like an inversion of reality. So instead of going to the central North Pole, he's actually going away from the central North Pole and he ends up at the outskirts of the dome. But we want to do the opposite because we want to get to the real paradise, not away from it's just an inversion basically. It's a little hard to explain, and plus I'm kind of getting tired. But so Ed Harris is saying, any unpredictable behavior has to be reported. So this guy's saying he's still breathing, and here again with the breathing symbolism, and of course he's still breathing because he's woken up, and now he's about to escape from the domed area, from the fake paradise. And they send his friend over to the 3-6 house with the three X's on the door. This is all like 666 symbolism, the physical world. And he's like, yelling for Truman, "Hey, it's a surprise party!" And under the blanket was this snowman, and they could have put anything under there. I don't want to get overly into it now, but this snowman symbolism is something that I'll have to talk about in the future. So he's like, "Oh, I wonder where he could be." Then he removes, so he's got this island of Fiji that he's always trying to get to. And if you look up what the name Fiji means, it actually just means island. So the place he's trying to get to is the North Pole Island, the real North Pole Island. So he removes that map, and behind the map in the wall, there's this ladder. So JC climbed or True Man climbed the ladder out of the underworld and went up through this portal opening, and the portal goes to the lawn or his garden. So he went from the underworld to the garden. He went from the abyss to paradise. So here, Ed Harris is like, "Get me the lawn cam." So this guy goes up there, and now he's in this garden that we saw Truman working in the beginning of the movie. So he's like, he's gone. So then he's like, cut transmission. This is the communications disruption that happens in almost every one of these stories. And then all the TVs go out, and also these numbers obviously are symbolic numbers. You could rearrange them to a number of interesting numbers, as you could see. And also where Ed Harris is located, where he's controlling the world, is under this dome that also has the layers over it. And then they're trying to find Truman because they can't find him. And this dog's name is Pluto. And he's saying, "Yeah, hunt him, Pluto." So Pluto is symbolic of like the devil. And he's also the black and white, coloring on the dog. And, this is like, the devil's last chance to try to fool the elect, basically. And he's like, "We need more light. We'll never find him this way. Cue the sun." So this is like time speeding up. This is also like, um, you know, going beyond space and time. He's leaving the dome. Time is going crazy, like we've been noticing. I mean, time has definitely sped up for me over the last 10 years or so. So the light comes up and the people are confused. They're like, "What time is it?" And then his name is, Christoph. But I think this is also similar to what I was showing you guys in Willy Wonka, where in like that Rachmaninoff, so it's like, Rockman in the off position, this is like Christ in the off position, because obviously Ed Harris, while he's like the God figure, he's not, the welcoming, all loving God. He's like the testing God. And he's also keeping JC, prisoner in this fake world and all that. And he's also got, the heavy dome symbolism going on here with the small dome and then all the bigger domes and all that. So then in order to find Truman, they find him with the lighthouse camera. So again, this lighthouse symbolism, and I showed you guys like the lighthouse in Lost, in the last stream. The lighthouse comes up a lot. It's symbolic of the North Pole Mountain, of course. That is the tower where the light comes out of, and it's also symbolic of the bell tower and the water tower, and these are also symbolic of us. And they find him on camera A108. And in Lost, the 108 number is a big number, so I don't want to get overly into the number stuff. I also don't know it 100%, so I don't want to get overly into it at this time. But I'm just saying that they could have chosen any number, so purposefully chose A108. And then here's Truman. He's on his vessel. And then Ed Harris says perfect, which is often associated with Jesus, this word perfect. He says that's our hero shot. And Jesus is the ultimate hero. This is like the Chiro symbol that Jay's talked about a lot too, where I learned that from, where the symbol where it's like a P coming out of an X, that's the Chiro. And that's also symbolic of the X at the North Pole and the blue beam rising up out of it. And this is also, Jesus's life force, basically. And he's pieced together this puzzle of how of his Eve basically at paradise. This is where what he's trying to get to, and then Eve is watching him, from outside of the dome and all that, from paradise, from the island. He's supposed to go find her on this island. And then they're going to access the weather program to start the storm. So they localize the storm over the boat. So of course, this is like the plasma apocalypse, the world-ending storm, and also the storm around the North Pole. And then this testing godlike character is like, he'll be too afraid. He's counting on him to be afraid and to stay in the prison. But he doesn't. And he's trying to, and then this is Jim Carrey out on the boat. His boat has been shut down by this storm, and the compass on the boat, it's no longer moving, and it's kind of just rattling around. So again, we have the compass malfunctioning because he's almost at the North Pole. He just has to weather this last storm and he'll be there. And then he says, give him some lightning. So this is the plasma storm. And then he's like, is that the best you could do? You're going to have to kill me. So like, this is the mentality that we all have to have, where it's like, no matter what, the devil or, this test or whatever throws at us, we have to keep, persevering through it. And then that's how we arrive at paradise. So here we have the domes and, the dome layers and all that. And then he eventually hits the dome with his boat to finally realize, the truth of this world for sure. And then he gets to the exit and he's about to leave. And then he hears, essentially God's voice from, the heavens. And he's saying, you can speak, I can hear you. And he's like, well, who are you? And he says, I am the creator. And then if you watch this scene, he pauses after saying creator. So he's like, I am the creator of a television show that gives joy and hope to inspiration to millions of people. And he's like, so then who am I? So he says, you're the star. And I think that this, star, when we see this symbolism, it relates to this central star here that you could see in like this, this Freemasonic, tapestry or whatever this is. And this has all the world script, symbolism and stuff that I've been talking about. And frankly, I was made aware of this all by the Holy Spirit and from, seeing all these, movies and things and watching channels, like Jay Dreamers and other people. And before I even saw these things of the, Freemasons, because what they have, these are all guarded secrets of the real world, So you have the sun physical pillar and the moon spiritual pillar, and you have the heart and the G and the star and the all-seeing eye in the center here. And obviously, all the symbolism means something. I don't know what all of it means, frankly, but I do know a lot of it. But it's just the story of our world, and whether these Freemasons are good or bad, it doesn't matter. These are just symbols, and I think there are some good, some bad people in these secret societies. But the world is definitely run by, you know, the evil is whatever. I don't want to get overly into it, but I'm not saying that Hollywood or these people who run the world are good. They're not. But the symbols themselves aren't good or bad. They just are what they are. So he's like, was nothing real? And he says, you were real. So we're in this fake world, but what we're doing is real in this fake world. And there's this other movie called Snowpiercer, which I don't want to get overly into because I'm already way past my time here, but um, they basically equate it to a sequel to Willy Wonka, and you could check this out for yourself on YouTube. There's a couple of videos on this, and it basically is a sequel. It's like a secret sequel to the Willy Wonka movie, and Charlie basically grew up to be Ed Harris. So here we have, Ed Harris in the Truman Show basically being Willy Wonka, and then we have this other, world script movie basically saying that, Charlie grows up to be the new Willy Wonka in this Snowpiercer movie. And it's just, again, like someone was saying at the beginning of this stream, that they use these certain actors to play the same roles in multiple different stories. And Ed Harris is one of those world script actors who often plays like this, Willy Wonka fallen god type of character, and or like spiritually low, or however you want to put it. And then in Stranger Things, this will be real quick because I've talked about Stranger Things a lot in these streams. So they're talking about this the upside down basically. So like we're in this world, and the upside down is this underneath area, and they're saying they're trying to find a couple characters who are lost in this upside down world. And he said the only way to get there is to basically conquer time and space, and they need to pass through a gate that they track to this Hawkins lab area with our compasses. And this is the Hawkins lab area, which is the big X marks the spot, and it's also the communications tower. This is the North Pole Mountain. It's also run by the Matthew Modine character. And this is where Elle comes from. Elle rises up out of this North Pole Mountain, and she's supernatural. And uh, Dustin says the gate has a really strong electromagnetic field that can change the direction of the compass needle. So again, we have the spinning compass and all that relating to this North Pole Mountain area. And in Willy Wonka, like I was showing you guys, at the North Pole area, he's saying, you can't get out backwards. You've got to go forwards. There's no earthly way of knowing which direction we are going, no way of knowing which way we're rowing or which way the river's flowing. And this is similar to The Wizard of Oz, which is one of the biggest world script pieces of media that there is. This is also a Mandela affected title, it looks like. And it's like when she meets the Scarecrow in this, North Pole area world, where he's, pointing in one direction, then the other, and then different directions, so she doesn't have to have a compass with the needle spinning, they can portray this symbolism in a different way. And it's through this, Scarecrow giving her all these different directions. And it's the same thing that happens in Alice in Wonderland, which is another huge world script piece of media. This also looks Mandela affected, especially the L into the A here. And here's another poster for it. So you have the Cheshire Cat talking to Alice, and he's pointing one direction, then the other, then different directions. And this is the same thing as the compass needle spinning all around. And it's like I was showing you guys in Joe versus the Volcano, which is another huge world script media example. And when they're going to the final North Pole island, Meg Ryan's like, we're going to this island of Waponi Woo. So here you have the WW island symbolism, like Willy Wonka. And she says, we eat well aboard the Tweedledee boat. So here again, they're invoking the Alice in Wonderland with Tweedledee and Tweedledum twin vessels or twin boats. And also the sunflowers symbolize the eclipse. And you also possibly have the dome symbolism with the wheel here. And it's the name of the boat. Her father, who's essentially the god character, said he'd give her the boat if she took him to the island. And he's got two of them, the Tweedledee and the Tweedledum, so these twins. And she's also a twin, by the way. Her twin was Tom Hanks's previous guide, and now she's the new guide, and she's also the yellow and blue. And I've talked about this movie quite a bit in a previous live stream. But she says the Waponis are known throughout Polynesia as having a peculiar love of orange soda. So here, the orange 33 symbolism, like the 33 mountain, and no sense of direction. So the people at the North Pole Island have no sense of direction because they're already at the place where the compass points to. And in Lost, just going back to that real quick, I just want to show you guys how they constantly reference Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, because those are like arguably the two biggest world script pieces of media, like next to like the Bible, basically. So the leader, the Antichrist leader of the people who are already on the island, his name is Ben. He gets trapped, but possibly likely on purpose, in this trap, and they quote unquote capture him and bring him into their group. And most of the people don't trust him, and he claims to be this guy named Henry Gale who arrived on a hot air balloon. And they actually go out to search for the hot air balloon, and they find it. So this is like the Wizard of Oz and the hot air balloon. and they're all looking up at it because they can't believe that there actually is a hot air balloon. But then they decide to dig around some more, and they find the actual body of Henry Gale, and this guy Ben is just pretending to be someone else. He's actually the leader of the others and basically the head antichrist on the island. And later, when Locke is with Ben, he's like, you know what I think. I think your people are idiots if they believe you take orders from someone else. You're the man behind the curtain. You're the Wizard of Oz, and you're a liar. So again, with this Wizard of Oz symbolism, and here's a scene where Jack is reading to Aaron, who's basically the magical child and the blue beam symbolism, and he's reading him Alice in Wonderland. They could have had him read any book, but it's Alice. Alice took up the fan. The hall was very hot. I wonder if I've been changed in the night. Let me think. Was I the same when I got up this morning? But if I'm not the same, the next question is, who in the world am I? So very interesting. I don't want to get overly into it. It's something interesting to think about. That's the great puzzle, and they're thinking about it. And then here's a later scene where he on his room, the decorations. He's got the rabbit. This is the TikTok symbolism. The white rabbit symbolism comes up in a lot of things, and his real mother is the yellow and blue and all that. He was basically, even though there was a father, technically, he was basically a virginal birth because the father wasn't there and all that. He's got the G on his bedspread, just like we saw with Indiana Jones and the G, because he's like the blue beam essentially at the Garden of Eden, or the G in the center of the map. And this light here even has like the 99 and the blue and white symbolism. So for like that nine and blue beam symbolism, because nine would be at the top, which I've talked about in the past. And we were actually talking about it a little bit in the chat as well. And just a quick line of dialogue this afternoon. You said you were our leader. It's time for you to act like one. He's talking to Jack Shepherd, who's the Jesus, one of the Jesus characters, the main character of the story, and like the hero. Um, and he says, lead them to the radio tower, Jack. Take us all home. Lead us to the communications tower to speak with God and take us to paradise, basically. And then I'll end it with this How It Ends movie. Just one second here. All right, just checking out the chat here. Oh, thanks, Jay. Appreciate that, man. Yep, gold is a conductor for sure. Best stream. Thanks, Jared. I appreciate that, man. I'm very glad you guys are here. Yeah, any unpredictable behavior has to be reported. Well, Eric, I mean, if you want to start making videos, man, there's just start doing it. You'll always get better. Even if you start out, terrible or great, you'll keep getting better. So there's only one way to do it, and that's to start. Yeah, the Janus symbolism for sure. Yeah, that's true. Get Twain. Uh, Desmond, one of the Jesus characters, he says he could have been to Fiji, but he wound up back at the island. And the word Fiji means island. Yep. Yeah, the Truman Show explains how they could lie to everyone so easily or unapologetically. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely good to be unpredictable. Although we all have our routines and stuff. Just checking out the chat. Yeah, the Star of Bethlehem. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got to rewatch Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump also has a lot of Mandela effects in it too, by the way. And it's also a Robert Zemeckis movie. Yeah, you get the larger story by putting all these other stories together. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. Yep. The gate is the door. Oop, chat jumped on me. Yeah, Joe versus the volcano is awesome. If you haven't seen my previous, live stream on it, definitely check it out. It's in the poster for it's in the thumbnail. Yeah, I think Jim Morrison became Rush Limbaugh too. That's funny. Yeah, Lost was huge. It's crazy how big the budget was. It was like, I think, like, Twin Peaks, like, really started the ball rolling with, like, TV shows that were like a continuing story and they weren't just, like, wrapped up in one episode, you know? And then, Lost took it to, like, the next level. Yeah, Dave Chappelle and Joe Biden, definitely not the same people. That's funny, Jay. Yeah, yeah, if you haven't seen the, Snowpiercer Willy Wonka videos on YouTube, definitely check them out, it's really interesting. Alright, so, how it ends, we'll end the stream. So this is a movie, of course, about the end of the world, and, it starts off this is Chicago, I think, and, so basically, Forrest Whitaker, his daughter is this, Sam, and he's saying, you know, his daughter and this guy who he's talking to are talking about finding a house. So this is the main character. I kind of forget his name at this moment. You know, at some point in the future, it'd be nice to have some more room. So, like he's saying, like I have two minds about it. This is like what we saw in Contact with like the twin personalities and all that. His name is also Tom, which means twin, by the way. What are you have two minds about? So he's like thinking about like if he should provide assistance to his daughter and her new husband or not. If memory serves, you were unemployed before you moved to Seattle. So again, with this, Seattle is a big North Pole symbol city. It also has the Space Needle, which is like the blue beam, essentially. I saved, and so he says, I saved and saved until I started working for North Bridge, where I started making some real money. But I always had a plan. Why did you move to Seattle? Oh, so he doesn't like how they moved to Seattle because he wanted his daughter to stay in Chicago near him. So his wife's getting mad because he's getting kind of drunk. She's, you know, Tom is twin. So then his wife, or you know, Tom's daughter calls him, and what happens is there's a communication outage. So she's like, you know, power's out, and then he loses communication with her over the phone. So this is the communications disruption that we see in almost all these stories, basically. So he goes to get a flight to Seattle, and the flights are delayed because some major thing happened on the West Coast. So, you know, telecommunication outages, and then all these screens go out. So that's basically like the end of the world. So him and so the main character and let me just real quick try to do this. It's gonna bug me. Okay, the main character's name is Will. I just wanted to get what his name was. All right, so Will and Tom they get together and they start driving to Seattle because they obviously can't get a plane or anything faster, so they drive to make sure you know that his daughter and his wife are okay. And here we see the 911 symbolism and all that. And they get to that town. In this town, they pick up this girl who's a mechanic, also. So it's the three of them driving towards Seattle. And he's saying, you know, so, or someone's saying, you know, so you guys got a radio signal, not here. You know, there's no communication. Also, little crows, a symbolic name. And they get to this crossroads. It's like the North Pole crossroads. And of course, this movie is symbolic of all the things that happen in and around the North Pole during the end of the world. And they choose the left path here, I think. Yeah. So they go through a lot of trouble, to say. Um, So the girl, the mechanic in the back, she says, "Check this out," and she shows them her compass, and her compass needle is spinning all around, and she says, "It's crazy." And then they look up, and there's this huge storm coming, and they say, "You never see clouds like that before." He says, "Hell no, like, it's hell coming." And then she says, "Something's coming." Usually, someone will say there's a storm coming, but we have the storm coming, and then she says, "Something's coming," so it's, close. And then we have, the sparks and the explosion. They have to get in the car to be protected because it's like a, Faraday cage, basically. Here we have the plasma storm. And then he says, "You see that bridge? We need to hide at the bridge. I never saw a storm like this before. It's crazy. Still no internet, no cell service." And then they stop at Ashland Heights. So this is symbolic of like the phoenix, the ash tree, the Yggdrasil tree, the world tree. He says, "I have friends there. We should check it out." So then they're also driving through like a wheat field, and when they get there, you see the water tower, and this is like the wiper blades that made this shape on their windshield, and this is like the dome, and it's also like the kraken tentacles coming in through the dome. And it's like literally just like the cover for Under the Dome. So under the dome, you have the dome with the water tower under it, and here, what do they show us? The dome with the water tower under it. And he's looking for supplies, I think, and they get into a bunch of trouble, and near death experiences where they have to, like, because there's going to be, like, gangs and people in post apocalyptic scenarios where they're trying to rob you or kill you or stuff like that. So they get into a car accident trying to get away from some people, and Forrest Whitaker gets injured. So he's got a problem here where he he literally can't breathe. So again, we have the black man saying, "I can't breathe." There's almost always somebody who can't breathe and someone saying they can't breathe, and it's usually a black man, but not always. But it's like the George Floyd thing, which was also on the world stage. So he's saying, "What's going on, Tom? I can't breathe." Tom was the twin, and he's saying, his lung is collapsing, so he has to put this needle into him in order to help him to breathe. And then he eventually dies, and then he burns him in this car, and this is like the symbolic of like the burning man, the burning house, the phoenix rising from the ashes. Because um, I'm a little tired, so it's kind of hard to explain all this right now. But you know, he was like the um, if you think of them as like the same person, basically, like Tom is his like dark twin or like his left pillar, basically. Um, this is him becoming like a whole person. Now he's no longer two people; he's one person because they were both searching for the same woman and all that. Um, so he's now that he's lost his car and he's lost Tom, and he also learned a lot from Tom. Like Tom was like ex-military. He learned how to like fight. He learned how to like handle a gun. Like he was basically like useless before he started this journey with Tom. So he goes on this journey, and like this is why like our left pillar is so important. Like our left pillar is what makes us strong. It's the pillar of strength. So now he's got this pillar of strength incorporated into himself. It's probably a better way to put that. So he starts hitchhiking, and this family stops, and he's like, "Where are you going?" So he says, "I'm going west, trying to get to Seattle." So then they say, "We're going north." So we have the north symbolism and the Seattle symbolism. And then he says, they're saying go to Canada, something about the air. So again, they have to get north. This is like the Greenland movie. They have to get north to safety in the plasma apocalypse. And then they pass by this place called Coeur d'Alene. And he says, "You should take this exit." And basically, Coeur d'Alene means heart of an all. So the word Coeur is French for heart, and Aline is the all. But what is an awl? An awl is a sharp pointed tool you use to pierce, something, typically leather. But so it's the blue beam, so they have to stop at the heart of the blue beam, essentially. And he gets out and gets a gas mask so he can breathe. This would be a case where a mask would be a good thing. Usually it's a bad thing. So he's in this, nuclear winter, plasma apocalypse scenario, and this is what Seattle looks like. And so that he's, searching for his wife, and he climbs up the ladder past the broken glass. This is like the broken firmament. And then when he gets in, they show the Space Needle right behind him. So this is like the end of the world with the blue beam shooting up and the dome cracked. And he's it's difficult to breathe. He needs help breathing. And then he finds a message from his wife that says, "Will, come find me at Stone Mountain." So he has to go to the North Pole rock, the Stone Mountain, to find, his Eve in paradise. So he's traveling to go to this place to find her. And this webbing reminded me of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and stuff like that. I don't want to get overly into that right now. It's also like the web, like the Kraken spider web type thing. So he finds his wife at this cabin, and she's been staying with this other guy. And this other guy was kind of hoping that Will was dead so that he could, take his place and be with this woman. So they all kind of uncomfortably meet and all that. And up above them is the Northern Lights. So again, with all this North Pole, Northern Light symbolism, Northern Lights are also plasma. And he's saying to this other guy who's like the usurper, he's like the um like Denethor in Lord of the Rings, basically. Like it's basically like the Antichrist. Like the when Jesus is gone, he's like the usurper or the guardian, or there's a better word for it. I'm trying to the steward. He's called the steward of Gondor. So this guy's like the steward of that, North Pole house, like that cabin that he goes to, and he's trying to take the place of, the Christ hero character. And that's this guy here, whose name is Jeremiah. And they're like, it's not safe here, you should come with us, even though they don't get along, obviously, because they're both fighting over the same woman. So he's like, where are you going? So he says, we're going north. So he's like, I'm not the boogeyman. I remember that, I saved her life, when this thing started. So this guy's not terrible, but he becomes terrible. And he's like, we thought you were dead. He's like, well, I'm not dead. I'm here. And then this guy was about to kill him. So now, because Will um, has become a more capable person from his left pillar, he's able to kill this guy first. Whereas if he didn't learn all those things that he learned from the Forrest Whitaker Tom character, he would have gotten killed in this situation. But it's because of that, the strength of his left pillar now, that he's able to overcome this situation. So so then this huge storm starts coming again, and he starts running for Sam. And also, Sam is kind of like a nickname for God as well, by the way. If you look up what the name Sam means, it means like voice of God, or one who hears God, or something like that. Um, so he grabs her, and they're doing, the handhold as they run away. Um, and then they get into the car and flee, and they flee towards this pyramidal mountain as the storm is chasing them from behind. And he says, we're going to make it no matter what happens. We're going to make it. Here's the big storm behind them, and they eventually outrun it and get to paradise. We have again, Adam and Eve getting to paradise through the storm, and that's the end of this stream at about 3 hours, about an hour than I wanted to go to. My voice is really shot. All right, I'll just check in on the chat. Oh, sweet, man. Well, a lot of awesome comments today, guys. I guess Friday's a better day to stream. Yeah, just trying to find where I was at on the chat. Let's get a drink real quick. Oh, Jay asks if I've seen Stay Tuned. Yeah, I have seen that. That's a pretty awesome movie, actually, where they have like the supernatural remote control and they enter the different shows and stuff. It's been a long time since I watched it, though, but definitely don't doubt that that's uh, World Script Media shows. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Appreciate that. Yeah, hit the likes if you've gotten anything out of this video. Appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, Rolly. Eric. Yeah, see you at the crossroads for sure. That's why that song was so popular, that Bone Thugs and Harmony song. When that came out, that was like constantly on the radio and on MTV and stuff. But it's because it's so powerful with the world script, you know, see you at the crossroads. Yeah, that's true, Jay. There are a lot of, school buses in apocalyptic movies. That's definitely true. Yeah, Anita, I have asthma too. Yeah, it sucks. Asthma and allergies. It's definitely tough to breathe these days. Yeah, I've never played Fortnite. I've heard a lot about it, and I've seen, like, the maps that look like the North Pole map. But yeah, I never, played that game. Oh, chat jumped. Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah, E4 is talking about Fortnite, I think. Yeah, Hunter x Hunter, yeah. I've seen Hunter x Hunter. That anime is amazing and very world scripty, and I've talked about it a few times. And the logo actually got Mandela affected while I was doing the live streams. So, like, I showed it, like, one live stream, and then it changed, and then the next live stream, I pointed out how it changed. So, I think, once I start really focusing on the Mandela effect, hopefully that will be happening more too. 'Cause, once you see, like, reality change, man, it changes your whole perspective on life. Oh, thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Kiddo Twain. You guys are awesome. Really appreciate you being here. Bye, Anita. Thanks. Oh, Rolly actually made school buses. That's cool. Hey, Jason. Oh, it's good to see you, man. Yeah, sorry. I usually do these streams during the day. Uh, I have a my work schedule is kind of whenever, really. Most of it's like editing work, but then sometimes it's like production work, and a lot of times production work is at night. So it just depends. Yeah, sure thing. E4. I appreciate you guys being here. Uncommon Truth. Thank you. All right, guys. Really appreciate all you guys in the chat. This is maybe even the best chat I've had so far in a live stream. But yeah, it was pretty awesome, and I'm pretty tired. So until next time, I wish you all the best and God bless.